On the call to order this meeting of the Osawatomie City Council on June 25th, 2026 at 6 p.m. here at Osawatomie Middle School. Madam Clerk, will you do a roll call?
Councilmember Chesky.
Here.
Councilmember Mason.
Here.
Councilmember Dean.
Here.
Councilmember Hennis. Sorry, Councilmember Jameson.
Here.
Councilmember Hennis.
Here.
Councilmember Bragg.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan. Here. Councilmember Caldwell. Here. Mayor Hampton.
Here. If you will stand for the pledge of allegiance as I remain standing for education. Councilman Bradley Liz. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this community of Osawatomie, for its heritage, resilience, courage, and care for one another. As the city council meets tonight, I ask for you to bless the city manager, mayor, city council, those that are representing Alcove with divine wisdom and integrity. Help them, Lord, to listen well, to speak truthfully, to work together for the common good, humbly placing the needs of our residents above any personal preferences. Allow us to seek understanding as we come here to get the full picture of everything that's in development. Lord, in moments of strong disagreement, I ask that you would grant us peace that passes all understanding. Teach us to listen with respect, to speak with kindness, to remember our neighbors, pursue safer and stronger city of Osawatomie. Guard our words even when we differ, and help us to seek to lift one another up instead of destroy one another as we honor you. I pray this in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Can you hear me? Okay.
Nick, you're on the system, please.
On different scene.
It was funny. Test.
Okay, we move on to consent agenda. Consent agenda item, we act upon one motion unless the council member requests an item be removed for separate discussion and action.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as provided.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Dickinson, a second by Councilwoman Phillips to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any other questions or comments from council? Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Chesky.
Aye.
Councilmember Mason.
Aye.
Councilmember Dean.
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hennis.
Aye.
Councilmember Bragg.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan. Aye. Councilmember Caldwell. Aye.
Motion carries. We will move on to comments from the public. We always give the pastor an opportunity if he would like to speak. You're good today, John? All right, perfect. So citizen participation will be limited to 3 minutes, and I will call you as you signed up to speak. I'm just going to go down the list here. So first up, we have Polly Plain.
And do you need me to say my name and all that kind of thing?
Polly, but if you could move that mic, just for yourself, maybe.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Do you need me to say my name and address?
Nope, you got it.
Okay. There. I'll put these. I don't always need them, but sometimes.
Can you guys hear her?
I said I look down for a second.
I think.
What'd you say? Oh, that's because it's not always close to it. It makes a difference.
Up a little bit. Just give me 1 second.
Go ahead. You again?
Better.
Yeah. I'll have to remind myself here. Okay. I wanted to say that I have, since all this has been going on, researching, it's hard to remember everything, so I try to make points on this. That they've made statements that this will help our tax base. I think this is very doubtful that the data center would help that because the points in Kansas and other states, we do not want data centers for one thing. And if you put your house up for sale and facilities now, a lot of towns are against data centers. So if they're not going to move here. Because you say data center, why would they move here? So I think that would bring the town tax base down, in my opinion. And also, you have construction, local or nearby workers, we could bring a lot of people to our area, which is some of the comments. If they did move here, let's say during construction was happening, but then they would leave. But a lot of people are going to be, assumably, they're going to try to local or people from Kansas City. Kansas City people aren't going to live down here unless it's just maybe for a short time, and then they're going to move back home. Because just like if you work at Osawatomie State Hospital, you know that we have people from all over coming to work there. They don't stay here. That's a big deal. Some of us have lived here. That's one reason I actually live here and moved here. I was looking for a home and I work here, and it's really nice. And so also, like, I will mention that because in one of the posts, I seen somebody talking about why, that this would bring in new people. I don't agree, because I moved here 3 years ago and I met somebody else that she moved back here about 2 years ago, and she's from Osawatomie. I do not think that will help because, like I said, I think you're going to scare people away with the data center, because that's the big thing now, isn't it? In the news all the time. No one wants them in Kansas. We're all fighting it. And of course, around the world. So I also will comment, this is just not so much on the, that you're talking about the tax base. When I looked at my little graph that you can do on Miami County, that you in Osawatomie received most of my funds. It's not Miami County. I was blaming Miami County, and I realized it's Osawatomie that takes most of my money. And okay, so that's it. I'm going to come on anymore. And see, I did that. And okay, and then some of the other points I want to make about this is working at Osawatomie. I don't think, and someone put a map on there recently on the website, that's going to be even closer to us than we knew. And we're, all of us that work there, because I can't speak for them, because a lot of these people don't live in town. There's some that do, but most of them in general, they grew up in Kansas City areas, right? Or other areas, even Lynn County. We have different counties coming in all the time. Franklin, all different places. They don't want the data centers. And they're even fighting it, the same thing in Ottawa. But that's this. See, as I said, wow. All right, well, you heard my little spiel of what I thought. Some of it.
Thank you.
Next up will be Laura Dean.
It's pronounced Lori.
Sorry, Laura Dean.
All right, in the spirit of the Q&A. Is it? Is that better? Okay. In the spirit of the Q&A tonight, I have a question for the council. With the plan that Alco has for expanding its footprint into the utilization and access of the electrical and natural resources outside
Could you speak into the microphone?
into the night?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, now stand over here. With the plan that Alco has for expanding its footprint into the utilization and access of the electrical and natural resources from neighboring cities and towns, rivers, counties outside of Osawatomie city limits, when will the Osawatomie City Council be releasing the results of a continued environmental impact study to show the implications that the expanding resource pool will affect only the residents and not non-residents that you deem unworthy to give a comment here tonight. And then I yield my time. Thank you, so
This is not when we answer, we will get into that. Okay? If you want to keep your time, you've got more to say.
So you're not gonna answer?
You know, this is how this is set up. We don't answer right now. This is your time to make comments to us.
I'm choosing to use my time for this question and answer so that I asked it and I get an answer from
We
me.
choose not to answer at this moment, like. Next up is David Dale. So you don't want to go up?
Mine was a question to answer.
Okay. Next up will be Natalia Cortez Bar.
Everybody hear me okay? If I talk like this? Good evening. In Osawatomie, if your grass gets too tall, you have 10 days to mow your grass before the city is allowed to abate it without further notice and at your expense. The expense will be added to your municipal power bill. You don't get a meeting with city staff. You don't get weeks of discussion. You don't get somebody walking you through your options, just a letter in the mail. And if you don't comply, the city can mow it and send you the bill. And after that, they can continue to send you bills throughout the year without any further notice. Those rules don't change based on who you are, what your circumstances are, whether you're elderly or disabled, or whether it rained a lot the previous week. Will Alco be held to the same standard? Will they have 10 days to abate anything they accidentally drop into our river? Or will they get special treatment as they have throughout the duration of this proposal and discussion without any public disclosures that have been cleared? The special treatment is already clear to everyone in this room, so I don't expect it to be any different during the permitting process, which is why none of us are citizens, especially myself, who would love to see this town grow, who came here because I saw the opportunity and I saw the spirit of the people that lived here. So if we're all here and we all feel this way and we're all asking questions, people from both sides of the aisle, people that don't get along on Facebook are all here asking questions, then I ask the city council to consider why. Why are so many people all of a sudden interested in all of the questions that haven't been answered? So the rules should not become more flexible just because of the amount of money that you have. The rules should not be more flexible because of a promise of future development. Those rules should apply to everyone. So I would like to ask the city council before any ground is broken to be sure that a full ecological review be done. The Merizine River Valley is an important asset, both to the people of Osawatomie and to the state and to the region. So I would expect to see those ecological reviews done and disclosed to the public before any permits are issued. Thank you.
Next up will be Troy Hart. Next up will be Jennifer Hart.
You don't know policy about that.
It'll be Jennifer Hart, sorry.
You said I could speak. Okay. You say I can't speak.
The guidelines were, you sign up, you're here.
I know, but I'm speaking.
I appreciate you being here.
Is that not disrespectful?
What's 3 minutes? Yeah.
Okay,
3 minutes.
good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and Mr. Glendinning. My name is Jennifer Hart. I live at 33301 Osawatomie Road.
Get a little closer to the mic.
No, look.
Yeah, a little closer to the region.
I acknowledge that I do not live within the city limits, but I do reside approximately a half mile from the current layout of Project Catalyst. I'm here to speak regarding Project Catalyst. For 2 months, our community has packed rooms to voice deeply felt anxieties about water, noise, environmental impacts. In response, The developer has shifted their PR strategy, promising air-cooled designs and a larger 283-acre tax buffer. Tonight, I want to step away from abstract tech industry promises and look at documented local reality. Before we hand over 283 acres of our town's future, we have a duty to look at the actual track record of the partner we're choosing. Consider their local pattern of behavior. The Swenson School, 1009 Pacific. In December 2023, this council approved an R3 rezoning. Alcove Development stood here and promised beautifully managed housing for our local seniors. Today, no seniors live there. Construction timelines were abandoned. That historic landmark is sitting on the open market right now as an unfinished shell flipped as is for $295,000. It was, until today, not so coincidentally, a dangerous eyesore. In Paola, 110 East Peoria Street, the exact same playbook was executed. The developers promised a historic restoration for an upscale event venue. That venue never opened. The property was stripped of its branding and promptly flipped as is to a secondary investor. Alcove Development has zero corporate history of building or operating 500 megawatt hyperscale data center campuses. Their documented track record across Miami County proves that they are pre-development land brokers and tax incentive flippers. When Project Catalyst suddenly ballooned from 116 to 283 acres on May 29th, it wasn't a tech company wanting more land, wanting to build bigger. It was a pre-development zoning ploy. If a developer consistently leaves local landmarks empty, unrenovated, and flipped for a quick profit, why are we trusting them to 283 acres of Osawatomie? Please follow your own rules. Establish strict zoning that protects our people and our environment. Seek out other municipalities and counties that have done so. There are some close. Don't let the developers dictate the terms of the zoning. You were elected to look out for this community. Don't let someone you employ tell you what to do. Please do your job, protect it and your citizens. Thank you very much.
Mark Davis.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm Mark Winkles, and I was a resident of Osawatomie, I thought, until I found out that my property was de-annexed in 2023. I'm here to oppose Project Catalyst, not because I'm against technology. I work in technology. I understand the importance of digital infrastructure. I also understand the importance of due diligence, risk assessment, and accountability. Those principles are expected in every major technology project, and they should be expected here as well. We're being asked to approve one of the largest development projects in our city's history, based largely on developers' promises. We need to ask a simple question. Who verifies the claims? Who pays the price if they're wrong? The developer projects millions of dollars in annual tax revenue and says this project will have minimal impact on city services. If that's accurate, they should withstand independent review, not just appear in a press release. We're told this project will create jobs. Most construction jobs end when construction is complete. What remains is a relatively small permanent workforce compared to the scale of the project and the infrastructure required to support it. And we also need to talk about public safety. These are not ordinary office buildings. They contain massive electrical systems, backup generators, fuel supplies, battery systems, and other complex infrastructure. If something goes wrong, our first responders are the ones expected to show up. Has an independent assessment determined whether our first responders will need additional training, specialized equipment, more staffing, upgrades to our water system? Has anyone identified the long-term cost of emergency planning and ongoing support? If those costs exist, who pays for them? The developer or the taxpayer? I would hope the developer. It's also stated the project will place minimal demand on local services. Let's see the independent engineering studies, fiscal analysis, and public safety assessments that support those conclusions. And here's another question. If the promised tax revenues, jobs, or infrastructure commitments don't materialize, what legally enforceable protections does the city have? Are there performance guarantees that hold the developer accountable? Or are we simply asked to trust projections? This project will shape up Osawatomie for decades. Once the land is developed and the infrastructure is built, those decisions cannot easily be reversed. Our children and grandchildren will live with the consequences. I urge this council to slow down and insist on independent verification before moving forward. Demand transparency and accountability, demand independent engineering, fiscal, and public safety reviews. The responsibility is not to rely on optimistic projections, it's to ensure the interest of the citizens of Osawatomie come first. If Project Catalyst truly delivers the benefits being promised, it should have no trouble standing up to independent public scrutiny. Thank you.
Well, you made it, glad you did. If you'd like to come give yours.
Thank you.
Mayor, council members, and fellow citizens. Tonight, I want to ask a very simple question. Why is Osawatomie being asked to trust a developer with a project that appears to be larger than anything they've ever done before? We're not talking about a small commercial building. We're not talking about an apartment complex. We're not talking about a neighborhood redevelopment project. We're talking about a proposed hyperscale data center of over 500 megawatts of power, requiring enormous amounts of infrastructure, creating years of construction, industrial traffic, noise, lighting, and permanently changing the character of our community forever. So where is the track record? What completed hyperscale data center has Alcove built? What hyperscale data center project have they successfully delivered? What project in their portfolio is remotely comparable to what is being proposed here? The citizens of Osawatomie deserve answers because this project was being discussed and promoted before the city even had a zoning regulation that specifically allowed it. Data centers are not currently defined as a use in the zoning code. There are no hyperscale data center regulations. There are no districts specifically designed for this type of development. Yet somehow there was a pre-development agreement. How does this happen? Shouldn't the zoning come first? Shouldn't the regulations come first? Shouldn't the public process come first? Shouldn't the citizens know exactly what protections exist before commitments are made? If this project is truly beneficial, why not slow down and do it correctly? Create the zoning, create the standards, conduct traffic studies, conduct environmental reviews, evaluate the impacts on nearby homes, businesses, and community institutions. Determine whether this use is even compatible with Osawatomie before asking citizens to accept it. And perhaps most important question of all, who is the actual end user? Is Alcove planning to own and operate this hyperscale data center? Or is the goal simply to secure the land, the infrastructure, and approvals before handing this project off to somebody else? Because if ownership changes tomorrow, the impacts on this community remain forever. The issue before us is not whether technology is good or bad. The issue is whether Osawatomie should gamble its future on promises instead of proven experience, established regulations, and a transparent public process. Before the city commits to a project of this magnitude, the burden should be on the developer to prove they have the experience, qualifications, and track record to justify the trust they are asking from this community. Alcove's involvement with the former Swinton School property, now under public scrutiny and city review, raises serious questions about whether it can be trusted as a responsible neighbor. Until those questions are answered, skepticism is justified and necessary. And I do want to encourage everybody in attendance to please stay for this entire city council meeting out of respect. Thank you.
Next up, we have JR. Hello.
I was gonna ask, but right now, we're not getting any questions answered, correct?
Okay, but, okay. So right now, I'm just gonna say, when I was 18 years old, I signed on the goddamn line. And that line said, including my life, against foreign and domestic. This seems like domestic to me.
Picked up here at the end of the day.
All right, I do thank you for coming, but I do got a question. Not a question, I'm just gonna say, on your website, it says Alcove is committed to responsible and ethical development. Is there anything ethical or responsible about building a hyperscale data center right across the street from an active psychiatric hospital and the Sunflower Recovery that is a place that houses and treats people recovering from addiction? No one in the world has dared cross this ethical line until now. Are we going to be setting the standard for where they can go? I just wonder about that. Have you reached out to any experts? Have you asked anybody in the mental health field what this could potentially do? What about that river? I feel like that we're rushing into this. It's funny, we haven't seen you, but there has been no activity on that build site until just recently when we started getting a crowd. That's interesting. I feel that we're rushing into this. There's too many what ifs here. Too many. I mean, yes, maybe it is sustainable, but what if that hospital can no longer provide treatment for them and they have to shut it down? What are you going to do when you have to tell everybody that works there, I'm sorry that you lost your job? That's just a what if. There are too many what ifs. We have to take this serious. Are we putting too many eggs in one basket? The entire Northland site? What if it depends on the administration state? What if it falls through a moratorium? Something like that. Or we've got it built. There's nowhere else to develop. But I do want to know, are you guys going to continue or is this a one and done, answers gone? And the last thing, are we factoring in, to me, it feels like a race against Ottawa, who can get their data center in first because they're wanting to tap out of the magazine too. That's two straining on one river. And like I said, it's not just one community. This is multiple communities in multiple states. Thank you. And thank you for being here.
Next up is Bill Grassi.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, community. My name is Bill Grassi and my family is closing on our new home on Cedar Niles Road, immediately adjacent to this site. City limit lines don't stop industrial blight, noise, bridge strain, which is why I'm here tonight. We chose this community and area to build a legacy for my grandkids and my great grandkids, to enjoy its natural Kansas beauty. If this project passes, that beauty will be gone. This proposal is dangerous foothold. It creates a gateway for outside tech interests to dictate our future, opening the floodgates to unrestricted industrial sprawl in a residential or rural area. The risks here are objective. This is an experimental pivot for a traditional real estate company. Data centers are complex, 24/7 heavy industrial utilities. Partnering with a developer who lacks a proven tech track record, it introduces unacceptable risks to our electrical grid and water security. If this footprint is such a windfall, they should build it in their own backyard in Lawrence, rather than exporting this noise and resource strain to us. Don't be fooled by the promise of 90 jobs and several other construction jobs. Construction crews will be pulled from distant metro areas, and the permanent roles will require technical skills that aren't sourced from our community. These are positions for outside commuters, not local families. Don't let our community become an experimental testing ground for a speculative corporate pivot. Protect our families, deny the variance, and vote no. Our natural beauty, our infrastructure, and our grandchildren's future is not for sale. Thank you. I request this be approved. I think that's all I have.
And so we'll move on to Kara Shipley Welker. Kara Welker. Kara Shipley. Is she signed up to speak? Okay. So that is all the people that did sign up to speak. So now we're going to move forward onto our presentation from Alco and their partners.
I signed
It will be.
I signed up. Big Brother signed up. Check your email.
We're going through the emails at the end of the day. We have all the questions that we are going to ask of the developer. Lee, we have your questions. Listen. We are going to maintain some order to this meeting. Right, that's what we have trying to do. We are all here to hear the presentation, get the information that we've all been waiting, us included. It will be questioned, will be asked. All the questions that were submitted, we have it stacked, 158 questions. We're going to ask this developer after the presentation.
Yes.
And we got your questions, but we did not receive your ask to speak. We're going to move on to the presentation, and then we'll start asking these questions. Are we going to turn the lights down to be able to see this presentation? Lee, I'm going to ask you this.
A resolution authorizing the city council to enter into a pre-development agreement for the redevelopment of property located at 1009 Pacific with Outlook Development LLC. Resolution number 1169. Whereas the city of Osawatomie, Kansas wish to have the blighted property found at 1009 Old Clinton Avenue.
Fix it.
If we cannot maintain order, if we cannot maintain order, this meeting will be over and nobody will get to hear the talk.
God, they made it clear. You emailed Brett. You either emailed questions and get to speak, or you emailed him and you got to speak because I didn't guys want to and they let me. They follow the rules, respect it. Please don't let them shut down this meeting. I want to hear what these people have to say. Everybody has the right to speak.
This is a public meeting, not a public discussion. In accordance with Article 7, Section 7.12 of the Uniform Public Offense Code, interruption of this meeting is a Class A misdemeanor. Any further disruption, you will be asked to leave. We do not want to do that, but we have to be able to hear this presentation. If you signed up to all of the guidelines, you have freedom of speech. We had county residents and city residents speaking today. Yeah. So we are going to turn the lights down and have this presentation.
Dan, I'm better than this. Why don't you shut up?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and members of the public, we appreciate you being here. And we believe that this presentation will shed a lot of light on the proposed project. And we believe that by answering the questions that were presented ahead of time, you'll have a lot more clarity on what's being presented, what has happened to this point in the project, and what the timeline looks like going forward. This clicker is not working. There we go. I'm GW Well with Alcove Development. I'm going to introduce Charles Tinsley with MDH Partners.
Yes.
Members of the council, really excited to meet with you guys tonight and talk through a lot of the questions that have been asked throughout the process. We have prepared a presentation that we think covers most of the key items that people are concerned about. And we are committed to working with you, your staff, and the city to make sure that this is a successful project and it's done in compliance with all regulations.
GW Well, I'm with Alcove Development, lifelong Kansan, been in the real estate world for a little over 10 years. And we introduced Charles, who you just heard from, so he can tell you his background so you know who you're doing.
My name is Charles Tinsley. I work for MDH Partners. We are a nationwide industrial real estate fund out of Atlanta, Georgia. We've done over $8 billion of industrial transactions and have owned and transacted on more than 100 million square feet of industrial throughout the country over the last 20 years. MDH was originally founded as a continuation of a family-owned business that was started in Atlanta, Georgia in the late 1960s and eventually turned into what is now MDH Partners. We are backed by some of the nation's largest nonprofits, and we deploy capital on behalf of them in the industrial space. I've worked in, over my 16-year career, I've had an opportunity to do a lot of cool stuff. I graduated from UGA in 2009 and got my commission as an infantry officer in the United States Army. Deployed to Afghanistan in 2012. You got a picture here of me on the combat patrol in Kandahar province during the surge. And I've worked at MDH for 5 years. I handle capital coordination with our investors, and we'll work on stakeholder management and entitlements for our development projects.
Okay, so the first question that we want to cover is why is a data center a good fit for Osawatomie? So the most impactful thing that a data center provides is a significant economic impact to the local community. We'll talk later about exactly what that significant impact is, but it allows the city to be more aggressive with tax reductions, with paying for your own infrastructure rather than using debt. And there's a whole host of things the revenue can be used for to improve the lives of people in Osawatomie. While there is significant financial upside to a data center, they use very limited city services. So it's high dollar for the impact. Studies have shown that data centers pay $15 in tax revenue for every $1 in municipal service that they take. So it's the most impactful economic development that the city can do. Number 3, it's the right size of job creation for a community like Osawatomie. You've seen DeSoto has had a Panasonic development that's providing 4,000 jobs. What comes with that is new schools have to be built, roads have to be built, and there's a lot of infrastructure that has to go to support that many people in your community. We believe this project supports about 100 permanent jobs. They're 6-figure jobs of a little over $100,000 a year. And so that's a meaningful impact to this community. That's people that are coming here and eating lunch and shopping and spending their money in this community. But it's not so many jobs that it's a burden to city services. So we think it's the right size of jobs for the community. Number 4, data centers produce very limited traffic. This is an existing industrial zone site, the majority of the site. And if a manufacturer was to go in this or a distribution warehouse, there would be significant all day long traffic in and out, causing a lot of harm to city streets, congestion for neighbors. So the data center is a very limited traffic impact for the community. So we think that's a good plus for this town. A little bit of history of the site. This site has been zoned and slated for industrial development for over 20 years. The land was given to the city of Osawatomie by the state of Kansas with the express purpose of creating tax revenue for both the city and the state. The city has extended utilities to the site in anticipation of some type of economic development. And as I mentioned, industrial zoning on the site has been in place for a number of years. Project history, I hope this clarifies many things for the community. We began talking with city staff really in 2023, I believe. They put the Northland on our radar and said, we'd love to see some type of industrial development. Keep us in mind as you have opportunities. In 2025, we had an opportunity to pursue a site for a data center. So we reached out to city staff and asked if that would be something that they would consider on the site. So that led to a pre-development agreement. And I want to be very clear about the pre-development agreement. That is not an approval of the project. Project Catalyst is not approved and it has many steps that it will go through to reach final approval. There will be more public meetings, there will be site plans, there will be studies that will be submitted to answer all of the questions that people have asked thus far in the meeting. So in December of 2025, the council discussed the pre-development agreement that took no action. It was discussed for public comment and public knowledge. In January of 2026, the pre-development agreement was voted on in open session and was passed and signed by the mayor. At that point, we began engaging our due diligence process to see if a data center was a viable fit for the site, and we began looking for partners who would bring the necessary economic and industrial expertise to help us bring this to the community. And that's how we've partnered with NVH through that process. There's been a lot of misinformation in the public about the project. One thing I want to very clearly state, no NDAs have been requested or signed by staff, council, planning commission. We don't believe in asking for NDAs out of public officials. You are here to represent the interests of the community, and any information that we give you is totally open to be disclosed to the public. And so that's not true that NDAs have been signed, and NDAs will not be requested for this project.
Let me say something about NDAs.
I think there's a lot of concern about data centers, specifically around NDAs. And I can go ahead and tell you, this is one of the most transparent development processes that's probably occurred in data center development. How things have typically worked, the big technology companies, the hyperscalers, they've been traditionally very secretive in how they approach things. Their site selection, their design is all a competitive advantage, and they want to make sure that their next project is under wraps so their competitors don't know about it. Because of that, they've approached a lot of these projects and their zoning and approval processes through a very secretive approach. This is the exact opposite of that. This project, as soon as it was even a twinkle in someone's eye, has been in the public light. And we are very, very early in the process. We've only initially completed a very, very preliminary due diligence process, seeing that it may be a viable project. And we're already in front of the city council and the residents of the community. So I think that there has been a lot of negative publicity about data centers because of them coming to light at the very end of the development of the pre-development process. This is coming to light at the very beginning of the pre-development process.
Continuing with the timeline, on May 29th, Alcove and the city issued a joint press release that the due diligence phase was completed and the project was moving forward to the application process. On June 12th, we sent a letter to Mayor Hampson letting him know that our engineering has shown us that the water usage for this facility will be significantly reduced from what we had originally planned. In fact, we believe the project will consume about 80,000 gallons a day in water, which is a 92% reduction from the amount of water that was requested in the pre-development agreement. Technology in this space has improved rapidly as AI and other data drivers are driving this technology. There's significant improvements on almost a weekly basis. So an air-cooled project is where the market is moving, and the days of evaporative cooling are nearing in the past. So we're happy to announce that. We also in that letter stated to the mayor that although the pre-development agreement talked about the possibility of a 50% property tax abatement for 10 years for the project, we no longer believe that is necessary. We have gotten a lot of positive feedback on the site, and the data center development will be able to support full taxes from day one. So we've removed two of the largest concerns that we felt like the public had as far as the property taxes and the water usage. And as we continue through the engineering of this site, many of the other concerns that people have will be addressed. And we'll hit this further later on in the presentation, but I just want people to know that as we've heard about noise and lighting and protected species and environmental, all of those studies are underway and forthcoming. We have some preliminary information, but we will formalize all those studies. They will be fully publicly available, fully available for you and the city staff to review. There's no secrets to this. It's just a process that has to go through. And so we want everybody to be very clear about where we are in the process and what's forthcoming. So tonight we're here to do a community engagement session. There are a number of questions that have been submitted, and we'll answer every question that was submitted. We're committed to doing more community engagement sessions. So we're in the process of seeing what the right format is, and we want to have a collaborative approach with the community. We know there are people that have questions. Some people will not want this project regardless of the answers to the questions, but we're still happy to answer any questions that they have. And we appreciate the opportunity to show the truth about what is being proposed. So formal zoning and site plan applications will be submitted to the city council in the coming months. We're working through all the environmental impact, water usage, all the different studies that are in progress. So that is coming soon. Why is this the right fit for Osawatomie's tax base? Nearly 80% of Osawatomie's property taxes come from residents. If you look at successful cities around the country, this is not a sustainable amount of taxes to be borne by the residents. So it's very important that the city finds a way to bring commercial and industrial development to lower that tax burden and also be able to provide the best city services to the community. And we know, having met with city staff, we know that there's a strong desire to provide those services and to bring tax relief to this community. And so we're excited to present a project that gives the city the opportunity to make those choices. Data centers can help rebalance the tax base. They add major new revenue without significant demands on city services. The other thing that's great about a data center is they're very recession-proof. As we're all streaming on our phones and using AI and completing bank transactions, we're all using data centers constantly. So when you have a major manufacturer come to your community, a recession 2 years later can put that business out of business. And then you got an empty shell and you no longer have the workforce and you didn't really receive the tax revenue. So data centers are very resilient for the economy, and they provide a revenue that creates a steady base for the city to build on.
Gonna hold this a little easier. So a lot of people have asked, why Osawatomie? Why are we coming here to propose this project? And why are we trying to advance in this community? And I think one of the reasons why MDH has been successful over the past 20 years in the industrial space is we look at development and acquisitions through the eyes of our clients. And our client in this case is going to be a hyperscale data center. There are three main reasons why we think that Osawatomie is the right community for this. First is local relationships. When GW originally brought this project to me and we began discussing it, I asked him, you know, who have you been talking to at the city? Like, what kind of processes have been in place? He showed me the pre-development agreement. He told me that there had been preliminary discussions ongoing with the city staff, and there had been a decent level of collaboration in place. These are all things that we want to have for a new project, and these steps are going to be extremely important as we continue the development process and ultimately attract that hyperscaler who wants to invest in this community. Ultimately, I know that hyperscaler and technology companies, I know it's sort of a dirty word here, but ultimately they're just made up of people, and people do business with other people who they know, like, and trust. And I think this is a very trustworthy community that will be a great fit for them. Availability of land. So as data centers have gotten bigger in scale, the number of suitable sites has gone down. And the fact that there's 283 acres of land that's available in this community will be extremely attractive to that hyperscale user. The hyperscalers like sites that have enough buffering to stay away from adjacent uses, and they like sites that have enough land that they can be flexible with their building configurations. And lastly, we'll talk a lot more about infrastructure during this presentation, but Osawatomie presents an interesting opportunity to tap into existing infrastructure. First of all, you've got US 169 that runs adjacent to the site, which, you know, finding highly improved roads in communities with land is a really interesting thing for most people. Electrical transmission lines on the north side of the site. This is probably the number one thing that will attract a data center. So data centers are always, they're pursuing sites that have ready and available power. And Kansas is served by Evergy and SPP. So SPP is the Southwest Power Pool, and they are one of the premier utilities and regional transmission authorities for new data center activities. And they are the ones who end up serving the site. They have the credibility and the track record of evaluating one of these sites from a generation and transmission infrastructure perspective, and they're going to be able to resource this site in a very reliable and trustworthy way. And the last is fiber networks. Fiber networks are existing along US 169 and will be an interesting opportunity to be able to tap into. So on that theme of infrastructure, a data center is a piece of critical infrastructure for the nation. Just to kind of ground that conversation around infrastructure, I want to talk about maybe the three nodes of traditional infrastructure. So first is transportation. So roads, bridges, air travel, ports. These are all kind of traditional things that have, you know, the public invests in and then businesses use to conduct commerce. Next is energy utilities. So when you flip on a light, you flush a toilet, you know, you run your gas stove. All these things are really important pieces that also are kind of collective goods. And lastly, civic and commerce. Obviously, we're participating in a civic discussion tonight. But government, national security and defense, healthcare, hospitals, and police and fire, all parts of important infrastructure. There's a lot of overlap between those pieces of critical infrastructure and what a data center is. I wanted to just highlight kind of the three main silos which, you know, traditional data center activity has overlapped in. First is personal. I think this one's actually a really interesting and pertinent one would be the first bullet point here. Every photo is stored on a server. I'm lucky enough to have two beautiful little kids, and I've been taking family pictures of them for the last 8 years. And every single one of those family pictures that I treasure is sitting in a data center somewhere. And it's you know, recorded, you know, all these wonderful memories. Every night when I'm done with work and I watch TV with my wife, I'm watching Netflix or HBO, all coming from the data center. Online banking that makes my life easier, interpersonal communication, cell phone, text message, FaceTime, all coming through a data center. Next is business. Data centers are kind of the glue that hold businesses together to promote commerce. Most businesses have, some sort of cloud storage or backup. Everyone uses email in business. Financial institutions use data centers to process transactions and to record financial data. E-commerce, Amazon, Shopify, all those businesses rely heavily on data centers for tracking transactions and ensuring that orders are fulfilled correctly. And lastly, infrastructure logistics. All the like during COVID, everyone saw what happens when infrastructure and logistics breaks down from things going out of stock. Well, data centers and their ability to track stocks throughout time ensure that that doesn't happen. And lastly, the government, national security and defense, processing Social Security, Medicare, veteran benefits, payments, all that stuff. I mean, if you log into va.gov, like I do, I see all those transactions and all those all that data is stored in a data center somewhere. Things that everybody in this room relies on. And then kind of the last note, and I'm sure this is a bit of a dirty word when you talk about it, but AI is going to be the driver of the new economy, and data centers, AI is reliant on expansion of data centers and that critical node of infrastructure. I think we kind of harped on how impactful data centers are to everyday business, but just look up here at the brands that are represented, and every single one of them is highly reliant on data centers and data storage and the transmission of information. So we've shared some full renderings tonight, so you can see what a potential data center would look like. But we also want to talk about the systems that serve a data center. We had a really good speaker earlier kind of talk about what are some of the other things that make these buildings tick. First is power and electrical. There's no secret data centers use a lot of power. They tap into transmission level infrastructure. They knock down that transmission level power to power that can be used at the server level. So you've got a substation, takes transmission level voltage and transmits it down to 34.5 kV or even lower than that to be used in the building. There are generators on site. These are mission critical facilities. Downtime is not acceptable. So they do have fully redundant generators, and they store their fuel in the belly tanks. So they do have to be filled up from time to time by the trucks. Cooling, mechanical, site conditions. So I think, we're going to talk a lot about noise tonight, but typically the cooling systems that serve the buildings are kind of what people are concerned about when it comes to noise. We talk about how you abate noise and how you implement engineering controls, but they are certainly a big part of these buildings. The reason why is electricity is burned in the servers, or not burned, but electricity is consumed in the servers, and then as the computers process information, they emit heat, and then that heat is removed from the building via these cooling systems. We'll talk a little bit more about landscaping and buffering, but it's going to be a really important part of our second time. And then lastly, we already kind of touched on the fiber, but connectivity and security is really important in these buildings. The connectivity will be done through that fiber network. I'm not necessarily an IT expert, but the hyperscale guys have network engineers and technicians who will be brought in to make sure that the buildings are connected properly. And then on the security side, the four walls of the building are essentially provide the security that is required for the servers. So there is, confidential information and proprietary information that's housed in the servers. So you want to protect what's in there. But thankfully, the buildings are built in a way that they can protect all that information. What we built here, I think a lot of people have seen our site plan at this point. It is a 283-acre site. We think that it's viable for 7 buildings built over at least 2, if not 3 phases. Each building is, each building's around, I think, 450,000 square feet, so a total of 3.3 million square feet. They would be 2-story buildings. Although some hyperscalers have ways of designing these facilities where you can pack all that computing into one level now. So as the technology continues to evolve, the density of the buildings is continuing to increase. So it allows you to have more compute in a smaller building. We have talked about the cooling. It will be air cooled. It is a continuous operation, 24/7. And then I think we kind of talked about some other stuff here.
All right, what does the data center make a good neighbor? We talked previously about small operational staff, low traffic, much worse industrial uses that you could go near. Limited emissions, any emission that comes from the backup diesel generator. Those run only in the event of a power lossage, or they're cycled on once per week for maintenance to make sure they're working. But any emissions are fully regulated by the EPA, and there's air permit tests that must be applied for, received, and there's ongoing oversight of that air permit. As we talked earlier, data center studies have shown there's communities all across the country that have had such significant revenue, $15 for every $1 they consume. There's stories of school districts that have given $50,000 bonuses to all of their teachers. There are stories of towns that have a full police department for the first time in their history. Fire departments that are fully funded for the first time in town's histories. So significant revenue. Thoughtful landscape design, as you've seen some of our renderings, we'll have heavy landscaping, buffering berms to protect surrounding property owners. And there is a lot of money spent in these facilities to make sure that there's strong buffering. Investment in infrastructure, the project funds all transmission substation upgrades, and it improves reliability for the whole area. So gone are the days where data centers were causing people's electric rates to go up. Actually, the opposite will happen. We'll talk about that later with the Evergy's large load tariff with Kansas Corporations Commission. But all upgrades for this project will be 100% funded by the project. That includes both electrical upgrades and any offsite city street, city utilities, anything that is required by the project will be 100% paid for by the project. And as we said earlier, the project will pay property taxes starting day one. Finally, data centers are here for the long haul. I mentioned earlier, industrial users can be easily wiped out in a recession, and data centers are very economically stable. And so you know that when this is built, when those dollars are invested by a hyperscaler in this community, they're here for the long haul, and that becomes very repeatable tax revenue that you can count on.
So obviously, this is billions of dollars of infrastructure that would go in, large investment. I want to point out that the hyperscalers, most of them have better creditworthiness than the US government at this point. And creditworthiness translates to ability to withstand downturns. So I know there's a lot of concern in this room about this thing being built and then a future abandoned. I don't see why some of the most creditworthy companies in the country would spend billions of dollars here and then leave it after that investment's there.
Okay, we want to talk about consumer protections that are established by the law, specifically related to electric rates. So number one, I just mentioned data centers pay their own way. Kansas has a large load tariff that was created in 2025 by the Kansas Corporations Commission and Evergy. And there's a number of protections in that large load tariff. One is that data centers pay 20% higher electric rates than other industrial and commercial users, who in turn pay more than the residential rate payer. Data centers are required to pay for any upgrades to the grid that are required for their project. It's illegal for Evergy to use any residential rate payer dollars to fund any upgrades for a data center. So there was a time when that did happen in other states in a different era. But those protections are in place in Kansas, and we're very proud of those protections. The final thing I'll tell you about the large load tariff is that when Evergy connects a large load like this project, they're not only required to have enough transmission to serve the project, they're required to have excess of 15% above and beyond what the project uses. So as data centers continue to be built, the grid is becoming more reliable, with more transmission and less peak demands because of the more generation that is coming online. So there is zero cost passed through to residents. Additionally, when a large user is connected to a data center, Evergy requires I believe it's 10 years, it might be 12 years. They require a contract that a minimum of 80% of that power has to be paid for during the entirety of that contract, whether it's used or it's not used. And this just allows Evergy to have peace of mind that when they build the generation or any new transmission, they will not be putting that on the ratepayer. We talked about residential ratepayers as Evergy creates more revenue through larger scale users. Because they are a regulated public utility, they have limited profit capabilities. So the more large loads they hook up that pay a higher percentage, this will drive the cost of electricity down for residential ratepayers. And regulators pre-approve all rate structures. This next question, very easy answer to this. Will there be an on-site power plant? No, there will not. That has been circulating. I don't know where that came from. That is not the plan. This is a grid connected facility. There's no on-site natural gas generation. There's no gas pipeline being hooked up. This is strictly a connection through the grid. And that's just the way we're presenting the project, that we have no desire to go behind the meter as some are doing. The reason we're looking at this site is strictly because of the proximity to the electrical transmission that's currently available. So absolutely not your power plant on site.
So again, we heard everyone's concerns about cooling technologies around evaporative cooling being utilized that would deplete watersheds. We're just going to go in that direction. I think the technology companies who lease data center space, they heard the public outcry and they leaned on the vendor community, the trains, the Daikin's, the carriers, and said, hey, we need efficient data center cooling technologies that do not utilize evaporative cooling. That cooling technology is evolving very, very quickly and is the market standard for facilities like this. We will have to tap into the city water supply to initially fill the system, and that would be the equivalent of filling up a pool. That's the extent of the water usage. Also, there will be employees working in the building. They'll need to flush toilets and wash hands, so we'll consume water for that. And then there is going to be a very, very robust fire protection system that's built in these buildings. Those do have water connections. Obviously, you don't want the system to run because you destroy all your sewers, but that will require an interconnection to the water system as well. Heard a lot of concerns tonight about environmental protection. So one of the things that we're doing in our due diligence phase right now is GW and I have hired an extremely skilled team of consultants to study quite a few different things. But one of the first things that we released was our wetland study and our habitat and endangered species study. Those studies are currently underway right now. We will be able to provide those to the city as part of our zoning application. How will sound be managed? A lot of concern about that. We hear you. So let's go through them. Again, we have a very, very skilled set of engineers who are working for us, and we have connectivity with the vendor community. We're going to ensure that any sort of chillers, air conditioners will incorporate robust noise abatement design. Generators will only run in case of an emergency or testing. That's it, emergency or testing. I know there's some questions about when the generators will run. We look forward to answering those later. If you look back at my site design that I presented, you saw that the chillers were located on the roof. They will be protected by parapet, so you will not be able to see them, and the parapet will further transmit the noise up, not out. Aside from that, we'll also have site buffers and setbacks and mature landscaping to protect the facilities aesthetically from the areas around it. And additionally, there's other engineering controls that you can implement to further reduce concerns around noise. There are screening walls, additional buffering. We're going to do the studies. We're going to work closely with the Planning Commission and city staff to make sure that the noise levels are at an acceptable level, and we will implement any sort of engineering controls that are required to ensure that noise is minimized.
Okay, as we discuss the revenue benefits for the city, I want to talk about how we came to these numbers. And I also want people to know that this study is going to be fully publicly available soon. We just launched a project website today. We're still adding content to it, but at the end of the presentation, you'll be able to see the project website. And in the coming days, the economic study will be there for people to look through. So we hired a company called Applied Economics out of Phoenix, Arizona. They specialize as a third-party economic impact analysis group. And so after we developed our site plan and our best guess on how much power would be at the facility, we sent that to this group. They took a few weeks to review. They calculated it. The nice thing about this is it's all math-based. It's not speculation. If you build so many square feet, you can look at the city's mill rate, and we know what the property taxes are going to be. When we look at the city's electric franchise fee with Evergy, we can calculate what those franchise fees are going to be. We know the city additionally charges sales tax on electricity sold. So this study is very detailed, but the math is very simple on how we came to these numbers. So the city of Osawatomie's budget, I believe right now is around $18 million a year. So our study from Applied Economics showed that this project, when fully completed, would produce north of $30 million a year in revenue for the city, nearly tripling the city's revenue that they currently bring in. That comes from a few things. It comes from property taxes, it comes from franchise fees on electricity sold, and it comes on sales tax on electricity sold. We're planning to work directly with Evergy to purchase the electricity. So those franchise fees and the sales tax on the electricity sold are strictly money that comes to the city with no requirements of building, maintaining, or owning any electrical infrastructure. So it's truly 100% gain for the city. Furthermore, for Miami County, they don't receive the franchise fees or the sales tax on electricity sold, but they will receive property taxes at north of $10 million per year. The school districts receive also between $10 and $15 million per year based on the analysis that would be presented. So this is a significant amount of revenue for all of these parties. And I just want to break it down a little bit. As you think about these numbers, it's a lot of money, but when you think about what can the city do with $30 million, you have to think about retired people that live in this community who are in danger of being taxed out of their home because they can't afford the property taxes. This provides the opportunity for relief for them. When you think about teachers in this district, the district's ability to pay them well, keep good teachers here so that our local kids get good education, this is a transformative amount of money for the school district. We haven't had direct conversations with Miami County about what they'll do with the additional revenue, but I'm sure property tax and other infrastructure projects are on their list. So I have a couple other ones that you mentioned. Yeah, you guys, number one, are having to make tough decisions about what streets to repair when and what infrastructure projects can move forward. This will make that much easier. And then finally, if you think about, our students, we're here in a school having this presentation, you think about the kids that occupy these halls during the school year. Many of them would love to graduate and have a good paying job here in Osawatomie. And this provides an opportunity for that. And there's a lot of technical education and training programs that are instituted by the hyperscalers in the communities that they work in to prepare local residents to take jobs in their facilities. And so we feel like that revenue is significant for all the stakeholders here. And we look forward to seeing how that revenue can impact the city in a super positive way. So project timeline. As we talked about earlier, everything we've done so far has been simply due diligence on the site. There are no approvals made to this site. There have been no applications submitted to the city. All that is forthcoming. So this summer, we plan to start submitting applications, with zoning and site plans. And with all of that, you're going to see a lot of studies that are underway right now. And we're going to have strong community protections in place, and city council will have an opportunity to weigh in on what those community protections are. As part of those applications, there will be public hearings where residents will have an opportunity to come and say what they think about the proposed layout, about the proposed noise, about the proposed electric usage. So all of that would be open for public discussion. Site plan will be open for public discussion. We've got a list of studies that are underway. That's not a comprehensive list. There are more than that, but landscaping, traffic studies, stormwater, wetlands, acoustics, light analysis. So all of those things will be submitted as part of the application, and you'll have an opportunity to weigh in on each and every one of those. Construction could begin as soon as 2028. So it all depends on, how the applications move forward, and we're also in communication with Evergy on when power can be available for the site. And so our best guess right now is sometime in 2028, you can start to see construction on site. And once again, tax revenues would begin as soon as the buildings are brought online. And additionally, a building permit on a facility of this size is several $1 million. So that will be initial revenue that will come into the city. So we want to give you a link to our website, projectcatalyst.info. There's a contact us form where you can submit questions. You can see all the project renderings and lots of detailed information about the project. So please take a look at that and send your questions in. As Charles said, we want this to be the most open data center discussion that has happened to this date. We believe that by starting the conversation 6 months ago, when we didn't even know if it was a viable site, the public has had a lot of opportunity to see things about the project, but now we're at a point where we can actually start to share what the project will actually look like, and we look forward to continuing to engage with elected officials and with the community on what the site can look like and what protections can be in place for the residents. So I believe now we are ready for questions. Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure how we're in 1 minute.
Thanks, guys. That it's presentation of it's good to. We have been submitted through email as we requested the questions for Jack. I don't know if you want to stand there to answer them or. Not there. There we go. So the way we've got it broken down into 9 categories, and I'm going to start with the first category, and then I'm going to pass it on to another councilman. That way we're all involved here. So the first category that I'm going to read off of is the construction period. Questions on that? So this question comes from Kathy Henderson. What kind of truck traffic will be, where there will be during construction, what roads will be used, and how will congestion affect residents trying to get in and out of their homes and get to work on time? How will it affect the hospital workers trying to get to their positions?
Yeah, so that will be part of the site plan, and the building permit application. We'll be working with the city to see what the approved construction entrance will be. We're aware of historic Jefferson Highway that is a great road that runs adjacent to the site. And so we certainly want to protect that or stay off that as much as possible. And so we'll certainly work with the city on establishing the proper entrance. The nice thing about a 283 acre site is there are lots of ways that we can get the trucks on it and they can move to the part of the site they need to once they're on the site. So we'll do everything within reason to make this not an issue for the residents.
Yeah, kind of going back to, unfortunately, you guys are going to hear this a lot today. We're studying, we have a really highly skilled group of traffic engineers who are going to be doing in-depth analysis during the construction period based on how it ends up being phased, as well as when it's finally stabilized and it's fully built. So we are going to study traffic in depth because we have heard it is a concern for the community.
Okay, thank you. This question comes from Bill Grassi. What binding legal guarantees or quotas will be placed in the development agreement to ensure that a specific measurable percentage of construction payroll actually goes to tradespeople and contractors residing within Osawatomie, Bayonne, and Miami County?
So we are definitely concerned about local involvement in the project. Projects of this scale require potentially hundreds of people at a time. I can only speak from my own experience and how these projects are actually contracted with and subcontracted. Prior to working at MDH, I was working on a major mechanical contractor in Atlanta. We worked on some really large data center projects, all of them having local involvement. And I used to work for a union mechanical contractor. Having local involvement was extremely important to them. So we are going to, try to find the right contractor for a project at this scale, and then make sure that they know that it's important to engage the local community on how you contract and subcontract.
I think the bottom line is that's probably not a hard guarantee of a certain number of jobs. We will do our very best, but we're going to be honest with you about what we can do and what we can't do. I don't think anybody would be pleased for us just to say what they want to hear tonight. So we're going to hire contractors that have the capability of building a 3 million square foot facility. And we would love to employ local people for that, but that's not a guarantee that we can.
Okay, I got 2 questions here from Polly Plain. How will you be clearing the land development, vegetation, and trees on the land? Will you use dynamite or bulldozers, etc., or other methods?
Definitely understand the concerns about how the land will be cleared. So as a part of all the development approval processes, we understand that land clearance requires local and state level study and ultimate sign off. And we will ensure that our civil engineer creates a grading and clearance plan, as well as erosion control plan that is very detailed and very thorough and passes all the rigorous scrutiny that you'll get to obtain land clearing. As far as the actual construction equipment used, I'm not aware of a project that's used explosives to remove trees. I definitely think that we will use construction bulldozers to clear and grade the site.
How will you lower the noise while clearing the land, which is often an issue in other data centers?
Yeah, that's a great question.
How will you lower the noise while clearing the land, which is often an issue in other data centers?
Yeah, so we're going to work very closely with the city staff throughout our construction permitting process to ensure that adequate controls for noise are going to be implemented throughout the process in accordance with what your requirements are for construction.
That 6th question from Elizabeth Holmes here. What experience do you have to attempt this kind of construction?
Yeah, I'll say, first of all, this is why we partnered with MDH Partners out of Atlanta. Charles can give you a little more background on them, but They've done over 100 million square feet of industrial space. They're highly capitalized and they are a credible partner to bring to this community. And we see that as our role as a local developer is to see what suitable uses are and what areas and to bring the right resources. And sometimes that includes partnering with somebody that has more expertise than we do. And so we're pleased to have MDH as partners, and I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I had 7 years of commercial construction experience prior to transitioning into development at MDH. We've been involved in, as GW said, 100 million square feet of transactions. I think that we've probably developed somewhere north of 3 or 4 million square feet over the last 5 years. So with that said, we certainly bring the skill set to pull a project like this off. We've already spent a really good chunk of capital studying and due diligencing the site. So having that, well-capitalized partner has already been super critical for GW and for the city for what our ultimate application ends up looking like.
Are you simply the building owner while another company will be building the interior? Who is it that will actually be running and maintaining the equipment?
That's a really good question. So typically how these deals get put together is the developer will handle a powered shell. So the powered shell is the four walls of the building, it's the entitlements, it's the grid infrastructure, and then there would be a lease put into place with the hyperscaler. The hyperscaler would then build out the facility per their specifications with the electrical distribution, the cooling equipment, and the servers they require. So if you think about it from a cost standpoint, I would imagine somewhere around about like 1/6 of the cost is the shell, and the remaining 5/6 of the cost would be borne by the hyperscaler, who's the tenant on the project and who would be building everything out.
The size and amount, type of buildings, machines keeps growing. At what point of the contract phase will you stop adding infrastructure to and around?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it has grown one time is what has happened. And when we initially entered into the pre-development agreement with the city, we began exploring how a data center would use the two city-owned parcels. And there were some challenges with how they would be used, including how close they were to some of the neighbors. And so as we evaluated what is the best layout for the site and for the community, we felt like adding to the site allowed us to lay the buildings out in a way that was less impactful. So as we added acreage to the site, we got a less impactful site, but there was room for more buildings. And so we do not anticipate adding to the size of the site again. We do not anticipate adding to the buildings. What you see, if there were modifications, it would be smaller, not larger. Just want to be pretty clear about that. And also, I'll say that there was an initial site plan that was released, and that was an initial concept that was done within the first 2 weeks of us having a pre-development agreement with the city. And it was done with the intent of what can work on this site so that then we can go find a partner that can help us bring the hyperscaler. So when we brought that to MDH, they said, that's not a good layout. We need to make some modifications to that. So what you see now is the product of our work with MDH, understanding what the right layout is so that impacts are limited and it's a functional site that attracts the right user.
If you're building this to last more than 10 years, and this is your groundbreaking project, why would you miss the opportunity to build something truly new and cutting edge that will be easily adaptable as tech grows?
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that data center technologies are rapidly evolving. So just the racks, the servers that actually sit in the racks, they are becoming much denser in how much compute they can do with a smaller amount of space. As we already talked about, the cooling technologies are rapidly evolving. So basically in that powered shell that we were talking about, you future-proof those buildings and give it plenty of space to change inside over time. And that way, that investment becomes much more durable. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that the servers are going to be constantly replaced over time. I've heard that some groups replace their servers as much as once every 2 years. So the servers are always going to be being updated, and the associated cooling systems will obviously have to continue to update as well as technology improves.
How will you prevent poisoning of the land, water, and air during construction?
Yeah, I'll let Charles handle the technical aspects of this, but I'll say we're studying all of those things, and this project is going to be regulated by the EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, Kansas Department of Health and Energy, all local zoning regulations and ordinances. So there's a high barrier of protection for the community. And I'll also tell you that when a hyperscaler is making a multi-billion-dollar investment, they're not going to take the risk that they're going to get shut down for 2 years because they had an environmental issue. So there are both practical and financial considerations made to make sure that there are no negative environmental impacts from the site.
Yeah, I also want to say that one of the initial pieces of due diligence that we've done is to ensure that the site is clean right now. A phase 1 ESA is kind of kicks off all projects. And I don't think there's going to be a single hyperscaler in the country who wants to run their business on a contaminated site. So because of that, we're committed to continuing to work with our team of highly skilled consultants to put together a plan for all phases of construction that protects the environment in ways that are compliant with all regulations at the local, state, and federal level.
What's the timing that we're looking at for the grant?
Yeah, I think we referenced in the presentation that 2028 would likely be the earliest.
This next question is from Jackie Newcomb. Will construction and heavy truck traffic require road repairs, and who is funding those repairs?
Yeah, so we talked earlier about protecting the Jefferson Highway and working with city staff and the council on the appropriate construction entrance and how traffic will work. We do have a traffic study that is in the process. And I'll just say, once again, there will be zero cost to the city for public infrastructure, whether it's new infrastructure or infrastructure that needs to be repaired. It will be 100% borne by the developers and the project.
And also, we're anticipating a list of off-site improvements, both pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction, that we'll work with the city staff on to ensure that after the construction is complete, the roads are repaired. In fact, they will probably look better than they did prior to the project.
This question is from Susan Lynch. What project has Alco completed this size? It did not follow through with the project at the West School or Swenson. So why should we believe they will complete this project?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So first of all, I'll say that's the reason we have a partner, is because we knew we needed to bring expertise to this project that we did not have. So we're pleased to have MBAs on our team. And happy to talk about the Swenson School. I'm glad that was asked. We've pursued. I'm sorry. I definitely want to acknowledge you guys and also acknowledge it's a city commission meeting. And so we've got to honor everybody. But on the Swenson School, I'll say this. We've tried to bring affordable senior living, low income senior living to the community. And we've applied twice to the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation for that project, and they've not funded it. And the feedback we've gotten is that the city does not have a grocery store, so it doesn't score high enough on the amenities list to qualify for that project. So we are proud to try to bring affordable housing to the community, and also we are very aware that not every project we look at works. And so we're actively evaluating what we can do with the Swenson School to provide community benefit. And we may apply for that tax credit again to try to bring the affordable housing, but if we renovated that school without a tax credit program, the rents would need to be north of $2,500 for it to make sense. And so at that point, it makes more sense to tear the school down. And we don't want to do that, but that could have to happen. So we're actively evaluating opportunities to continue with that. And we also have listed it for sale. If somebody else has a development proposal that we believe is viable, we would consider selling it to someone. So we're pursuing 2 tracks on that. But I just want to be unashamed that not every project we've ever done has worked. However, we have a great track record in delivering projects in the communities that we work in. And we've brought a great partner to this community, and we feel very strongly, based on the demand, that this is a good and viable project, and that the community benefits are significant. So we're proud of all the projects that we do, and I'm afraid to talk about any project we've ever done.
These next questions are from Dave River and Shirley Park. They will work from words to make figure data. We could read them once instead of twice. Has Alco Development ever developed, constructed, or successfully delivered a single hyperscale data center anywhere in the United States? If so, where?
We have not, and that's why we brought a partner to this community.
What specific experience does Alco have with projects involving hundreds of megawatts of power, billions of dollars in investment, and industrial infrastructure on the scale being proposed in Osawatomie?
Yeah, I mean, I think our experience speaks for itself. And also we have the capital and expertise to hire the most skilled contractors and engineers in the country to study this project and to ultimately execute it in an extremely competent manner. And then also, there's a question on the power component. I think one of the reasons why we originally decided we wanted to pursue this project is because of the quality of Evergy and SPP to be able to study the impacts of this project, correctly engineer and deliver on transmission upgrades, and ultimately resource a project like this. So I think we've got an incredible team in place. It's only going to grow as this project becomes more viable.
So why should citizens trust Alco to facilitate 500-watt megawatt hyperscale data center when it's propagating on projects that appear to be a fraction of the size and complexity of this proposal?
Yeah, I think that's basically the answer. We brought in a partner that has the credibility and the experience to deliver this project.
What completed project in Alco's portfolio is most comparable to this development, and how does it compare in terms of acreage, power, demand, construction costs, and operational complexity?
And I think it's kind of the same answer. We're extremely well capitalized. We have the ability to bring in the kind of best team of engineers and contractors to pull off a project like this.
Why should citizens accept assurances from a company that has never publicly demonstrated experience delivering a project remotely comparable to a hyperscale data campus?
Yeah, I mean, we've completed over 4 million square feet of industrial over the last 5 years. We've never lost a dime of investor or bank money in our impeccable 20-year track record. So I think that our track record certainly speaks for itself.
What evidence can Alco provide that it has successfully managed projects of similar size, risk, infrastructure requirements, and community impact?
I think it's kind of the same answer as the last one.
Why is Osawatomie being asked to take on the risk of a project that appears larger than anything Alco has previously delivered?
And so I guess there's a question there about how we work with city staff on permitting and getting this approved. And I think our commitment is to first put together an extremely credible design up front, using that incredibly talented and set of engineers and architects. And then I'm not going to put words in y'all's mouth, but I'm going to say we'd be willing to work with you guys to ensure that there's a gap analysis performed and any ability to review plans and evaluate the risks in construction and make sure that you guys are resourced in a way that you can review the plans and ultimately approve them in a way that lowers risk for the community.
Before any agreement is finalized, should the burden be put on the developer to prove his qualifications, experience, financial capacity, and successful track record, rather than asking the residents to simply trust promise?
Yes, absolutely. As part of our application process, you're going to get an opportunity to see all of those things, and the city will have a development agreement that eventually will be signed that will put strong projections in place for the community. And so we know that it's going to be a fully transparent process, and we look forward to interacting with you on that design.
This question comes to Kenny Quinn. Due to the fact that you have abandoned the old West Clemson School and now it's being sold as is, are you truly qualified to build a data center? And if so, can you show your work?
Yeah, I think I answered that previously, but I'll say we're committed to doing projects that benefit the community. And we've expended significant resources trying to bring affordable housing. There are some things that are outside of our control. And where possible, we mitigate those things outside of our control by partnering with people. And for this project, MDH Partners is helping us bring a very credible and affordable, a doable project to the community. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, and ultimately, maybe I could have covered this earlier, but a successful development is basically a test of capital and time. Time, I think we've got, not planning on breaking ground until 2028. And on the capital side, I think we've got the capital that's required to pull off a project like this.
Okay, that wraps up the construction period. The questions. Going to pass the microphone to Councilman Dickinson to start the next topic, which is economic development. Economic development.
First question comes from Justin Emerson. How many permanent jobs will there actually be after construction, and what kind of jobs are they?
The third-party analysis called for about 95 permanent jobs. These are a mix of HVAC, electrical, security, and obviously there's some tech computer jobs that are connected.
Yeah, I can answer that as well. I mean, so there likely are qualified HVAC and electrical technicians in this community right now. They could certainly be resourced from around here. There's going to be opportunities to train new employees to work in the facility. There are some highly specialized skill sets. I think we had someone earlier talk about, some experience they had with that. That's going to be on maintaining the servers, on the cabling and networking systems. A lot of those people will probably have to initially come in from elsewhere. But again, the hyperscalers and technology companies are committed to training local workforces to work in their facilities.
Next two questions are from Bill Grassi. Of the projected 90 permanent positions, exactly how many are realistic entry-level roles that can be filled by current members of our local workforce?
Trying to address that in the last response. Again, I think on the HVAC, electrical, likely people who are able to handle those positions currently, security, administrative. I think there's going to be a slight training gap for the more technical jobs, but there'll certainly be opportunities for training.
If you answered this one, the conversion of how many are hyper-technical specialized engineering certifications that will inevitably require Alco to recruit and import commuters from outside tech hubs.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely going to be a gap initially, but there's going to be opportunities for additional education and training as time goes on.
The next question is from Kevin Thornton. Is this creating higher taxes for local residents, or is it being privately funded?
So every bit of the project is privately funded, including any offsite city infrastructure will be privately funded. We've spoken with the fire department about doing an analysis on any gaps that might exist in the ability to serve, and we will work on a community benefit agreement to fund any upgrades to the fire department that are necessary, which will bring more protection to the rest of the community, as well as any upgrades will be available to serve the rest of the community. So we actually believe that, and have heard from city staff, that lowering property taxes is highly likely with this facility. And so we anticipate that there is no economic cost to anyone in the city of Osawatomie. In fact, we believe everyone that is a taxpayer in the city of Osawatomie is going to see an improvement in their financial situation once the project's completed.
The next question is from Holly Plant. What experience do you have to bring new data center since you never built this type of facility before?
Yeah, I think we've answered that several times.
Yes. The next question from Jackie Newcomb. What tax abatements, grants, or incentives are being offered to the developer?
So initially, when we talked about the pre-development agreement with the city, we had talked about potentially a 50% property tax abatement, and that was done as an inducement to try to bring the right hyperscaler to Osawatomie. As we've improved the layout of the site and gotten more confident with the grid capabilities of the site, we no longer believe that that is necessary. So there's no municipal benefits to the project being asked for from the city. The opposite is actually true. The project is going to put revenue within the city's pocket. I will say the state of Kansas does have Senate Bill 98 is a sales tax exemption for computing equipment for projects that are over $250 million. So the end user that is going to buy several $1 billion worth of server and computer equipment will likely take advantage of that and not have to pay the sales tax on that. That is the only incentive that we are aware of and expecting for this project.
The next question is from Rob Thurman. I believe this was shown in the slide, but we'll cover it. How will the bucket of money be distributed amongst the entire community, including the rural neighbors affected by this?
So the revenue distribution is going to be up to you guys. We will do our best to bring the right user that's going to produce significant revenue to the city, and how that revenue is used is not something we will have to say in.
Electrical portion here. I personally wouldn't have a problem with one chunk of that. It's their questions. First one is Hendrickson. Given the size of the project and how much energy it uses, what does that mean for people living nearby, and what protections are being provided?
So that's a great question. Something we're definitely concerned about. So he was concerned, I'm sorry, Councilman, is it? He conveyed a question about large transmission level voltage coming to the data center and ultimately being distributed to the data center, and what sort of engineering controls and studies will go into place prior to that. I think it's a very, very valid question. So we are going to work very, very closely with Evergy and SPP on engineering a system that is fully in compliance with all regulations. The regulations are there to protect people who work and live near the transmission line. So we are going to study that in depth, and we're going to make sure that it is all done completely in compliance with regulations.
Okay, how about this? Can you hear me? I'll try to keep it that way. What specific upgrades will be required at the local electrical substation to handle this fire? And what binding guarantees exist to ensure that these infrastructures costs will be entirely by the developer per Kansas Proclamation Commission guidelines, rather than being passed down to the local neighboring residents, taxpayers?
So we obviously covered the question about who's paying for the infrastructure upgrades. So given that it is transmission level voltage that will go to supplying this facility, you got to think about the power grid as something that is basically covers multiple states. The substations that will actually service this are not even located in Miami County. They're going to be located a long way away. Transmission level voltage will go to the site, and ultimately there will be a substation built on the site that will receive the 345 kV level transmission voltage and will convert it down to a lower level that's suitable to be used inside the facility.
In the event of a grid failure, how many megawatts of emergency diesel or gas backup generation will be situated on the 283 acre site? And what specific emissions containment protocols are in place to protect the local air quality of nearby and neighboring residential zones?
That's a great question. Something we're definitely concerned about. So the site is designed to be fully redundant. So if it's 500 megawatts of interconnect, it will be 500 megawatts worth of backup generators. So if you saw our site plan, you can see the generators would be lined up next to the building so they can easily service the electrical load that's in the building. You are correct. Only in a grid failure scenario where all those generators kick on. And the generators are, again, we've talked about emerging technology. We talked about public pushback on the technologies that are used. They have evolved in a very, very innovative way. Sorry, I'm using innovative too much here. They've evolved in an incredible way over time, and they are, the emissions are regulated by federal regulatory authorities, and we will make sure that all generators used on this site are fully in compliance with those regulations.
And local substations in that area even carry a data center that size without putting potential outdated systems at risk for failure?
So that's a great question. I think on the substation side specifically, the substations that will transmit voltage to this location are not, I don't think either of them are located in Miami County. And then there will be an in-depth study with Evergy and SPP on specific grid level upgrades that are required to service this site and ensure that the redundancy of, the quality of the power is capable for a site like this. So there will probably be tens of millions of dollars of transmission upgrades that are required. They'll most likely mainly be in other locations other than at this site.
Sorry, that last question was for Kelly Thornton. This next one will be from Stephanie Phillips. What have actual monitoring data shown regarding emissions from backup diesel generators and any other on-site sources? Have communities with large-scale data centers seen measurable changes in air quality or any documented public health impacts, including respiratory issues?
So we're definitely concerned about the emissions. I'm not aware of any concerns around that. I think the reason why is the generators only run in an emergency scenario or for weekly testing. So for the weekly testing, I would imagine there's different ways you could program it, but I would imagine each generator would probably run for about 5 minutes every week. So they just cycle on to make sure the motors, the diesel motors inside of them are well lubricated, and that all the components are working correctly. So internal testing.
What documented impacts have comparable data centers had on residential and small business electricity and water rates in those communities?
Yeah, that in Kansas, that does not happen. There will be no impact on electric or water rates, other than if the city has enough revenue, they could potentially cut into some of the rates. That's something they've mentioned to us in conversations. So there's no cost borne by anyone in the community for any of the electric or water upgrades or any of the streets, anything. So it's fully borne by the project.
Instead of relying on models or assurances from the developer, and the council provide real world data from similar data centers already operating in places like Northern Virginia, Georgia, Phoenix, and Texas regarding impacts to air and water quality, supply, pressure, and utility bills.
So I think that's a question for the council. It's a don't rely on the developer. So I probably can't answer that.
I would say as these studies are going on, we're still studying things as well.
Yeah.
I do not have specific cases to give you, but we are looking into them in other places. The next question are from Roseanne Phillips. Will new substations or transmission lines be required, and how close will they be to residential properties?
So, substation, yes, we have 20 acres on our site plan for a new substation to be built. So yes, definitely. Transmission, there will be 345 kV transmission lines that will go to that. We were going to work on placing those in existing utility easements that are already there.
Will EMF baseline measurements be taken before construction, and will post-construction monitoring be required?
So I think this is related to transmission level voltage, voltage traveling through lines. Again, all the lines are to be designed in a way that is compliant with all regulatory requirements. So I don't think that would be a problem.
Will the facility disclose projected EMF levels at the nearest residential property lines under both typical and peak load conditions?
Understood. I believe that this would mainly apply to the project substation that's going to be on that 20-acre parcel on the north side, and we've built in a lot of buffering there. So I don't think there will be any sort of challenges. That will obviously get our engineers to study it. People a lot smarter than me at understanding EMF impacts. So we're committed to understanding it and making sure everything's done in a compliant manner.
Will harmonic distortion or electricity impacts on surrounding homes be assessed and reported?
I'm not an expert in harmonic distortions. I do know that the infrastructure upgrades that go into serving the site to the grid level infrastructure upgrades, they focus on power quality. Power quality is very, very important for running a data center. The servers can be, they operate most efficiently with very, very high quality power. So any transmission upgrades that occur will focus on raising the quality of the power that goes to the data center. Hopefully that answers the question.
What's the new electrical load going to do to our power grid?
Yeah, once again, the project can be responsible for any new generation that Evergy needs to serve the project and any transmission level upgrades. So actually, the grid will become more resilient because Evergy will be required to add 15% above what the data center uses to the grid as a whole. So it adds more power to the grid, it creates more reliability.
This question is from Susan Lynch. What safeguards are in place to prevent existing residents and businesses from experiencing increased utility rates due to the infrastructure upgrades and capacity expansion required to support a hyperscale data center?
Yeah, I think we've just answered that.
Yeah. We purchased power from the Evergy, the city was one. Nelson Worley, living only 100 yards from the data center's property line, and with my family having multiple medical conditions that will be directly impacted by the diesel fumes and exhaust, how often will the backup diesel generator be running for testing? What specific air filtration will you use to guarantee my family's health is unaffected by the exhaust?
Yeah, about once a week for about 10 minutes on the backup diesel generators. Once again, air permitting by Kansas Department of Health and Environment is required, and testing is routinely done to make sure that it's allowable levels. So we're confident, especially when you look at where the generators are located on the site, they're not near the property lines. And so we're very confident in the air quality of the site.
What we still on the site plan?
Yeah. Yeah, well, when we do the site plan, it will show the location of everything. What we have right now is conceptual, and so we think it will be pretty close, but when we actually submit a site plan, it will show how far the buildings are set back from the property line and where the generator locations are, so we can get a more concrete answer.
Yeah.
we're also committed to working with the city staff and the planning commission on appropriate buffering and setbacks for the site. So
What type of power plant will be built in the future? This is from Polly Plain.
no power plant.
Jacob Vale. What legal mechanisms will be used if there is a water or electric shortage? Will the data center pause operation to ensure residential customers stay in service?
So we don't anticipate any water use outside the closed loop system. So I don't think that's going to be a major challenge. As Evergy and SPP study this load, they do detailed planning and see how the load interacts with the other items, the other large loads and other customers in the Evergy and SPP pool. And they make sure that there is it's called a resource adequacy test. They model that out in high detail and make sure there's plenty of generation resources and transmission resources before they'd ever resource a project like this. So I don't think that would be a challenge at all.
Be used if there's water or electric shortage.
If there's a,
How many that generated for electric?
Yeah, so there's generators fully backing up. So if the data center needed to shut down, it can still function on the backup generator. So that could, in the case of an emergency, that could provide more power to the grid. Water, we think we're using about 80,000 gallons a day in water. The city of Osawatomie has water rights of nearly 2 million gallons a day. And so, we don't believe that the water that we're using on the site is helpful for anything if there was a water shortage. If we don't have 80,000 gallons, that can't replace hardly any water for the rest of the community. But electricity, that does provide some safeguards for the community.
It's Daniel Beg. What's it there? Does Alco and or HKS intend to meet the requirements outlined in Senate Bill 98, including the prior approval by the Kansas Fusion Center Oversight Board?
Yes, I'll just clarify, HKS is our architect, and I think that question is MDH. Yes, we do anticipate that.
Does Alco and or MDH intend to tap into electric grid up to 75 megawatts and then use on-site electrical generation to avoid the tariff outlined in Senate Bill 98?
No, we plan to take 100% of the power from the grid.
That is the, we'll get it. Did you submit questions to the board?
Yeah, I just have a procedural question on whether, I think that everybody is getting sort of exhausted. A lot of the questions are repetitive and being made with the same things that needs to be done.
We're trying to honor the questions that people wrote and sent in to us. And we felt like if we I agree this is not a normal city council meeting, but we said this is what we're going to do. And we were submitted all these questions, so if I cherry pick questions and don't read somebody's question, then, that's bad the other way. So we're going to continue to read these questions. I think we'll through the third or fourth section.
Okay, my topic is emergency response. First question is from Jack to be interested. Are local emergency responders actually prepared for the electrical risk if something is massive?
Yeah, so I'll let you say that. First of all, the nice thing about having an on-site substation is the electricity to the entire complex can be shut off in a moment's notice. And we have had communication with the fire department, letting them know that as a part of the project, we are going to do a gaps analysis and any gaps that might exist for emergency response. And the project will only support the fire station and the volunteer firefighters and for anything that they need to be able to respond to an emergency. And just just so you realize, any of those upgrades are available to be used with any other emergency in the community. So a more well-resourced fire department is a safer community.
And we fully anticipate a list of requirements that this city will eventually require us as a condition of zoning to upgrade city services that are required and all be done on time. So that applies to infrastructure upgrades, offsite improvements, and any gaps in first responders, emergency capabilities.
To your response to, we will be, this is being recorded and will be on, able to be viewed on YouTube within a couple days. So, you know, if you do have other engagements or things getting exhausted, that, you can always watch it on there as well.
My next question is to Bill Brassey. What coordinated security protocols has Alcove Development established with federal, state, and Miami County law enforcement to protect this 283-acre footprint, and will local taxpayers bear the burden of increased regional policing and security monitoring?
So security is certainly an important thing for a project of this size, scale, investment. And I think we already talked about there's, you know, proprietary information that's held these servers. It very well could be my bank information or your bank information that's held there. So the first line of defense is how the building's constructed, and there are definitely, you know, security consultants who would be involved in laying out the data halls and making sure that they are constructed in a secure fashion. And I think that would reduce the burden of any future manned security requirements. As far as sir, do you mind repeating the last part of that question?
Will the local taxpayers bear the burden of increased regional policing and security monitoring?
Yeah, that's an excellent question as well. Again, on all items involving first responders, we anticipate a gap analysis to occur, whether it be fire or police, and those requirements, even if they are ongoing, will be funded by the project. So that will not be a obligation of taxpayers if this project becomes successful.
Another question from Phil Brassey. In the event of a catastrophic failure, cyber override, or targeted attack causing a thermal runaway, chemical fire, is our local volunteer and local emergency response infrastructure possessed with specialized chemical suppression equipment and hazmat training required between a major industrial tech fire without endangering adjacent rural residences?
As far as the cyber attack, disabling systems, I'm not familiar with how those are studied or controlled. I will tell you the facility will be equipped with a very, very thoroughly engineered fire suppression system that is tailored exactly for this use. So the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, they publish design standards for all different types of buildings, including data centers. And the system that would be installed in this building would be suitable for all the different applications that are in there. So that would be on the electrical, UPSs, backup power, servers, all that stuff would be covered under those thorough engineering controls. And then I think we've already mentioned that we are committed to a gap analysis and enhancing any capabilities of the first responders in the event of an emergency at this facility.
Next question is from Kelly Thornton. What are the needs in case of a fire? Is it lithium batteries or something else? Does Osawatomie / Paola and the surrounding fire departments have accessibility to equipment and or training that would be able to put out a fire at that size and intensity?
We kind of already covered it. I will tell you this, there will be, again, there's going to be a fire suppression system in place that's designed specifically for the materials that are stored inside the building, operational and non-operational. And then we'll make sure that the first responders are appropriately resourced to respond to any sort of emergency at the facility.
Next question is also from Kelly Thornton. If something goes wrong, who takes responsibility?
So, I'm assuming this is sort of an insurance coverage question. So facilities like this are, I'm not an insurance expert, but they are covered by insurance policies. And if the company is large enough, that's the tenant, they would self-insure all of their materials inside the building and any sort of impacts they would have. So, you know, if you think about Google or Meta or a company of that size, they likely have a self-insurance program. And they obviously have the strongest balance sheet of any company in the country. So I don't think you have to be concerned about them being willing to, insure and secure their investment.
This question is from Jackie Newcomb. Are local fire departments specifically trained and equipped for massive high voltage and battery system incidents?
I think we talked about the gap analysis and enhancing any areas where there's a gap.
This question is from Nelson Worley. What will the response time be in the event of a large scale fire with an all volunteer fire department?
I can't answer that question.
Hold on.
We got a real expert here.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Aaron Shaw, Chief. Our response time would be as it is now. It would depend on the time of the day and who's available, but we are probably 90% of the time well within our NFPA standard response. And what's that? We are a volunteer department. It would depend on where it's at exactly and time of day and how many trucks and first out men. So, yeah, I believe it's probably, I think 90 minutes, but don't quote me on it. I could go and post it if we need to. Also, as far as the training, 90% of the firefighters on our department are firefighter 1 certified, and that includes hazmat ops as well.
So I think also on the response time, the fire suppression systems are designed in a way to give a cushion for response of the firefighters. I mean, the systems are there to immediately put out any fire that pops up. Obviously, things happen, but it gives well within that 9-minute response time.
The last two questions are from Nelson Worley also. Will the Osawatomie Volunteer Fire Station be capable of responding to a fire in a large-scale data center? And will their equipment be capable of handling the fire on these large properties, as well as the rural residential properties only 100 yards away?
I think we've got an answer to that one.
This last question is, what equipment or suppression material do we use?
So specifically on the suppression side, there are a lot of different options. A lot of them are water-based. Some of them are not water-based, but I think that the standard design for a system like this would be some sort of water-based fire suppression system.
Next topic is noise. First question from Cassidy Henderson. What is being done about noise from cooling systems and backup generators that will be done to reduce disruption for nearby residents?
So the first thing we're going to do is conduct a thorough sound study. We're going to work with the planning commission and the city staff to ensure that the noise and the property levels are within acceptable limits. We're going to stay in touch with that noise engineer and the vendor community to make sure that we're receiving systems that have enhanced noise abatement operations.
All right, the next three questions are from Bill Grassi. Has Alco Development conducted comprehensive sound propagation studies using both EVA and EBC metrics.
Yeah, we're really early in the design process right now, so we don't have an advanced sound study yet. We're certainly committed to addressing those concerns.
What specific legally binding decibel limits under both scales will be established at the property line to protect adjacent rural residents and agricultural homesteads from both immediate audible noise and long-term vibrational nuisances?
And we're gonna work with the city staff and the planning commission to establish those levels and ensure our system is engineered in accordance with them.
What physical sound attenuation structures, i.e. sound walls, acoustic baffles, strategic filler orientation, are included in the engineered site layout to completely isolate neighboring rural residential zones from 24/7 operational noise?
Yeah, we're committed to delivering on all of those things, but again, we are early in the process. We don't have all those countermeasures fully designed, but we will when this thing's complete, when the design's completed.
Now, that's audible or is it not the city to the vibrational frequency?
I believe.
I'm not a sound engineer. We have those people on our team right now, and we will be studying the full regulated band of sound. I'm not sure how much better to answer that. Yep. We're definitely committed to studying sound. Message very much received.
All right, next four questions are from Polly Plain. Will you do a study of the effect of the noise low and high on mentally ill and people recovering from addiction for alcohol and drugs?
Yes, absolutely. So we do have a sound study in place. And I'll also say, I personally met with officials at the state hospital, but with the director and other officials with the state related to the hospital, and we have an open line of communication, both with regard to the site plan, the location of generators, and getting an understanding of what buildings they are housing patients in. And the sound study will verify this, but the building the patients are housed in is almost a third of a mile from the nearest building on the plan. It's highly unlikely they're going to have any impact whatsoever, but the study will tell us that. So just want you to know, we're keenly aware of that. We're in communication with the hospital on that. I need an open line of communication.
Also, I flew in from Atlanta this morning, and there's a Meta data center that is on the northwest side of the airport. And I knew the sound discussion was going to be very, very pertinent tonight. I drove down the road next to the facility, and I rolled down my window, and the sound of the insects outside the building was louder than the building itself. If you don't have to believe what I'm saying, you're welcome to go drive down there and see for yourself.
Will you do a study on the effects of the noise low and high on rural communities and the neighbors so close to the facility?
We're going to study the sound emissions from an engineering perspective. It seems like some of those other components might be more on the planning commission and our city staff to discuss with us. That's a requirement.
How do you lower the noise of the data center generator and possible power plant turbines? One company used the method to lower the noise, however, it is not a good solution. It helps slightly.
I'm not sure about the specific example reference there. I think that we've kind of discussed how we're going to address the noise. There's not going to be a power plant on site, so.
One article mentioned hot and humid weather, summer in Kansas, the same as our freezing weather for winter in Kansas. Have you researched the best cooling system for the data centers for the above mentioned weather issues? And research the cold weather and humidity has special considerations with the data centers.
We are committed to using the most technologically advanced cooling systems that are available. I actually have a background in HVAC engineering. I'd be glad to have a discussion with whoever wanted to know that. And we can get into it, but I don't know if it's worth boring everybody with approach temperatures and whatnot. So, yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah.
And I never, the really agree.
Yeah, those are certainly things that we're interested in making sure they're engineered correctly. So specifically humidity, that has an impact on evaporative cooling systems. We're not using evaporative cooling system here. So in areas where there's very, very high humidity, the outside air isn't able to accept as much heat rejection through evaporative cooling technologies. Not going to be a concern here. Given, 80 to 90 degree temperatures, there are air-cooled chillers and closed-loop systems operate in the desert where it's 115 degrees, and they operate completely effectively. In the winter conditions, the building generates heat from the compute operations, and it'll actually, dissipate heat out through the chiller. So even during the winter, there will be heat being rejected from the building. There are economizer strategies, and I know this is kind of inside baseball on the cooling side. There are economizer strategies that can help lower the energy consumption during winter conditions using that cooling technology. So there's cold conditions are only an extra opportunity to be more efficient in the data center rather than it being a liability.
Okay, this next 8 questions are from Roseanne and Chilson. What cooling technology will this facility use? Air cooled, water cooled, or immersion cooling? As a developer committed to low noise equipment on piping?
I think this question is about inside the building, not outside the building. So the evolving cooling technologies that allow for these higher rack densities, and I know this is going to get really technical, actually have a technology called a direct-to-chip cooling. So it flows water, chilled water right by the chips to allow the chips to reject heat. And it actually reduces the amount of fan consumption that's in the building, so fans burn electricity. So hopefully that answers your question. Likely directed chip cooling, however, there's always evolving cooling technology. So hopefully that answers your question.
Will the noise study use G-weighted measurements for low frequency sound or only standard 8-weighted decibel readings?
Yeah, we're definitely concerned about noise, and we will have some very, very smart engineers studying this. I'm not familiar with those with those characterizations.
What are the proposed decibel limits at the nearest residential property line, not just at the facility's fence line?
So we will work with the city staff and planning commission to establish noise levels at the property line. So we'll work closely, but I think that'll be more of a decision that's made by the regulator.
And this was a follow-up to that one. Will those limits apply equally to 2 a.m. and 2 p.m.?
It is a continuous 24/7 facility, and I think that the noise abatement procedures are going to be in place at all times.
How will backup generator testing be scheduled and limited?
Yeah, certainly during the day. Certainly during the day.
Who enforces noise violations after the facility open, and what is the penalty for non-compliance?
I'll defer to you guys in answering that question.
We will enforce it. Right, we will enforce it. We have not wrote the penalty for non-compliance at this point.
But we will make sure that the noise levels are implemented into the design, and there's essentially no way you can exceed those if they are designed along those criteria.
As a city consultant with an independent acoustic engineer, not one hired by the developer.
Say not at this point, because we don't have the engineering to know what we would be studying at this point.
Yeah, early in the process.
We don't at this time, because until we know what the study is, we can't put a study against what it is. Will there be a required community meeting before the permit is finalized?
I think you've studied the process.
Yeah, so number one, tonight's our first community engagement session. We're going to do at least one more to answer questions that the community has. And then as the site plan and rezoning requests move forward, there will be public hearings where residents will have an opportunity to come and ask questions and see what's actually being proposed. And at that point is when noise levels, building setbacks, all those, we can't answer exactly right now because the studies aren't done. But we will be able to answer those, and there will be protections in place that the project will be required to comply with those requirements.
Next question is from Jackie Newcomb. What are the enforced decibel limits for the constant humming of servers and cooling units, especially at night?
Yeah, well, once again, we will establish that with the sound study, and the city will have an opportunity to put limits on the sound.
And also this, I know there was a question about servers. Those are contained in the building, so there won't be any sound emission of servers. It's going to be limited to the cooling systems and potentially the backup generators when they're being tested or in the event of emergency.
And the last question in this topic is from Nelson Worley. What is the exact maximum decibel your level will admit at my property line, and how will you ensure we are not subjected to a continuous low frequency hum that disrupts sleep? What specific barriers, walls, or landscaping will you use to mitigate the sound, and how will this visually affect our rural community?
Yeah, so there's a menu of options for noise abatement, and we're going to study all of them. And we're going to work with you guys to study what the sound emission levels are going to be at our property line, and then you can do some engineering additionally to see what those sound power levels would be at other locations.
Chris, Chief Sharp looked into it. The requirement is 14 minutes to have 6 guys on site in a rural setting, and we currently are better than that. Most of the time, but that is the requirement.
Okay, can you hear me?
A little louder, please.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Planning and zoning. I have, the first 11 questions are from Cassidy Hendrickson. What is being done to prevent light pollution from affecting nearby properties?
That's a great question, and I feel like we may have missed that in the earlier presentation. Glad someone brought it up. So the light that is present at night at one of these facilities is for 2 purposes: employee safety and security. So there's not going to be any other reason to emit light outside of that. One of the studies that we're going to be doing along with our site plan approval is something called a photometric study. So it measures light levels in foot candles at different locations and different distances. So we'll have a detailed analysis of that. As far as the technologies we use, there's something called dark night technology and light. What I'm trying to say here, light shielding. There you go. That will be implemented to reduce light, emitting past the property line. But definitely something we're concerned about. Glad that was brought up.
Why does a data center this large need to be in a small community like Osawatomie?
Well, I did talk about this during the presentation. There's 3 reasons: local relationships, availability of land, and proximity to infrastructure.
Why was this site chosen instead of already developed areas like the former Great Plains Small Site in Olathe, which is a large area with no nearby homes and other suitable sites?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, the availability of the tract of land with access to the highway and the electrical infrastructure. Also, we believe it's important that these tax benefits don't only go to communities that don't need them. This would not be as transformational of a project in Olathe, in Park, or in Nexa, as it will be for the citizens of Osawatomie. So we both like the site for the infrastructure that it allows, and we like the opportunities to bring the revenue to this community.
What will this look like once it's built, including fencing, lighting, and buildings? What is being done to avoid tall fencing, with barbed wire, and harsh industrial look next to nearby homes?
Yeah, there certainly will be no barbed wire in this facility. We had some project renderings that we showed tonight. There's more of that on our website if you'd like to take a look at that. And part of the site plan and the approval process, we'll talk about what kind of buildings are going to be, what style. As you see in the renderings, they have different types of siding so that they don't look like just a big box metal building. There's architectural care taken to them. And so, yes, it is different than what is there now, which is a hayfield, but it will have architectural qualities to it. I'm sorry. I'm not-
Is there a buffer space at all, and what distance would that be for the property next to it?
Yes, there will be buffering. Once again, that will be on the site plan. It will show exactly how close to the buildings, the property lines, how close to the property line the buildings are and the neighboring properties. So that will definitely be a consideration. Also, location of diesel generators, all of that will be presented to the city with planning commission and city council. We'll have opportunities to say to us, no, that doesn't work. We want you to move this building. We want you to push back. And once again, that's one of the things that we like about a 280 acre site versus a 115 acre site is that we're able to be more flexible. If you looked at our site plan, we laid the buildings out where they're away from the current creek and wetlands areas that run through the property. And so we're allowed with a larger site to work within that site constraints and lay the properties out better so that it's less impactful and there's more buffering from the way of the properties.
Many nearby homeowners will have this facility directly in their view and immediate vicinity. What thought has been given to effects on privacy, view, and property value? And are there any plans to address those concerns for affected property owners?
Yes, absolutely. So when we've studied the area, one of the reasons we liked about the area, although there are homeowners nearby, and we acknowledge that, and we personally met with at least 3 homeowners, and can you hear me? Sorry. So we'll meet with anyone else that's directly affected to talk about buffering and fencing and all those questions. But what we've seen is that the other allowed industrial uses on this property would not look as nice and would create a lot of traffic and other effects to the properties of the property values significantly. We don't believe a facility of this quality will hurt anyone's property value, especially when the noise is handled properly.
The area is currently zoned industrial 1. Why is rezoning to industrial 2 being considered for this project when it is so close to residential neighborhoods and rehab facilities? Family homes surrounding neighborhoods and the Osawatomie State Hospital exists long before this project was proposed.
Yeah, so we'll have a rezoning application for part of the property, not necessarily confident it will be an I2 designation, it may be still I1. But I'll just reiterate that the property that the city owns has been I1 zoned for approximately 20 years. And there are a number of allowable uses in that designation that would be much less attractive to be next to a data center.
There's also a small historic cemetery next to the proposed site tied to the former Osawatomie State Hospital patients. It feels out of place to put something like a data center right next to that. How was that taken into consideration when looking at the location?
Yeah, so we've already contacted the State Historic Preservation Office to inquire about the cemetery and have them review our site plans to make sure that there's no impact on the cemetery. So that process is ongoing. And I'll say, the character of that neighborhood is very unique. There's a lot of historic property there. The state hospital is historic. The state hospital in and of itself is unique. There's rural residences, there's a solar field, there's a large gas transmission line. So the area certainly has a lot going for it. And we are doing everything we can to make sure both from a historical perspective and for the neighbors that the site has limited impacts. And I'll say, I've personally done 5 or 6 historic preservation projects. Work with SHPO on almost a weekly basis. And so I know who to talk to there and how to get those answers. And we're going to do that. We understand that it's important to the community. And I'll also note that there's other significant, Osawatomie is a significantly historic town. And there are other historic resources that the revenue the city will drive from this project will be preserved and appreciated for generations to come, because the city's going to have revenue that they don't currently have.
What specific justification is being used to support changing the zoning from industrial 1 to industrial 2?
Yeah, once again, I'm not sure it will be an industrial 2, but as we draft the application, there's whole criteria that has to be, it's called the golden criteria, that the city staff will report together to see if what we're proposing meets the character of the neighborhood and has protections in place. There's a number of criteria the city will evaluate. So whatever we propose, we will justify in our report, and then city staff, city council, planning commission will have an opportunity to review our findings and see if they agree. If they don't agree, they have the option of denying the application, or they have the option of asking us to make changes to the application so they will comply.
Given significant public opposition and limited visible support for this project, how are elected officials weighing this opposition in the decision-making process?
So I think that's for you guys.
Very significant. At what point is local impact given meaningful consideration?
From the very beginning, from the changes in our site plan to buffering to the ongoing engineering to make sure we're using the best technologies. We want to be good neighbors, and we're committed to that.
Why do we need data centers in small communities, and why don't we put them in industrial parks where the technology is needed?
Well, once again, we've talked about the large availability of large tracts of land, which is one of the reasons why data center, just as AI has increased, data centers have looked for larger tracts of land because there's more compute power necessary. We've also talked about the meaningful impact that the revenue makes in a small community versus a larger community. So for those reasons, we feel like it's a good fit, and that's why we're presenting the project.
That last question was submitted by Kelly Thorpe. Andrew Long. Will Alco development be providing any measurement of screening, buffering for all of the proposed structures?
Yes, that will be part of the site plan.
Amanda Bird, will the city and developer providing the public with a written mitigation and enforcement plan that includes specific measurable limits for noise, low frequency, hum, vibration, lighting, generator, testing, diesel emissions, construction dust, truck traffic, road damage, setbacks from homes, screening, burns, sound, walls, and ongoing post-construction?
There's a lot there. We're committed to ensuring our construction plans are certainly compliant with all regulations requiring sound, dust. These are things that are included in any sort of construction permitting activities. And then I think we've talked about the noise and how we would protect the community around there.
The next several are Lawrence Sterling. Who is this data center being built for, or is that yet to be determined?
So we're early in the process. We don't know. We have relationships with data center users, and once this project, it is viable and continues to advance, at some point, those, whoever ends up being the end user will be evaluated and selected.
How do we know it will not be a foreign interest that operates the center?
foreign interests. There are regulations on foreign investment around the country. I'm not an expert in that, but any sort of lease that we do will be compliant with all State Department regulations, national security regulations, in those regulations. So
How will it be assured that no Chinese products are used in the data center?
I'm not sure I can. There's so many, the supply chains are so globally integrated. I'm not sure that I can answer that in a really meaningful way.
Noise and light levels will not be evaluated or elevated above what is the current situation right now. That's the question. Meaning no lights will illuminate the night skies. No noise will be heard unless standing next to the building.
We talk about noise a lot. Let me reiterate our commitment to doing a photometric study and using technologies that eliminate, or not eliminate, but reduce the amount of light emissions from the property at night.
If and when this becomes a public health issue, what guarantees does the communities affected have that output will pay the bills?
This project's not going to be a community health issue. So.
How will all property owners be, compensated for any loss in property values?
So I'm glad that that was brought up. I think you may have already kind of addressed that. There's no recognizable like metric to say that, you know, a new industrial project down the street from you eliminates or lowers your property value. The site has been zoned industrial for 20 years. This could have been another industrial use that would have different impacts that would be greater than what this site and this use would be.
Then next two questions are from Susan Lynch. What specific measures will be implemented to protect these highly vulnerable patients whose coping capacity can be severely diminished by chronic uncontrollable environmental stressors from light pollution, air pollution, low frequency noise, and infrasound generated by the project?
So we've made very clear to all of our consultants that are working on this project of the state hospital, and we've made it very clear to them that engineering needs to not make sure that there's no impact on the state hospital, from the noise level, from the light level. We respect that it's been there for a very long time. We respect the care that the facility gives to those that need mental health care. I may need it after tonight. But you know, we're in open communication with them, and the nice thing about a facility of this size is we're able to, there's a lot of money being spent, and so engineering is not something we take shortcuts on. So from sound, from lighting, from traffic, we're using the best technologies and the best design possible. And you don't have to take our word for it. You'll see it in the site plan that's submitted, and there will be verifiable conditions that the city will be able to hold the developers to. And we're confident that when you see those, you'll feel better about the project and what we can tell you tonight when we don't know all of those answers.
What roads will be used to bring in the heavy equipment needed to complete this project?
Yeah, we will be working with the city staff and city council, but our plan is to stay off of the Jefferson Highway. We don't think it can handle construction traffic, and we don't want to leave it in worse condition than it's in. We appreciate the historic value that it represents to the community. And as I said earlier, it's a 283 acre site. There's a lot of ways we can access it. And we're committed to working with the city staff and council to make sure that we access it in a way that causes as limited disruption as possible.
The next several questions are from Lee Brewer and Victoria Park. Why was the developmental agreement negotiated before the city had a zoning district. Defined land use, category or project-specific regulations for micro-scale and data centers.
So the pre-development agreement was to see if it was feasible, and we feel like it's feasible. Now it's our job to say to the city, these are the objections we want to put in place, and this is what we think it can look like. And they have the opportunity to hear from you, neighbors, to hear from everyone that's concerned about it, and they'll be the ultimate determining factor on if it's right. But we haven't pre-zoned anything, we haven't submitted any applications, and so nothing is happening outside of how the normal process would work. What's different about this process is the city is the landowner. So when we evaluate development projects, we oftentimes spend 6 to 12 months determining if what we want to build there works in that area. And so, no, the city does not own all the land. So we oftentimes spend 6 to 12 months evaluating whether or not a site works. If it doesn't work, we don't submit an application and the public never hears about it because there's nothing submitted. In this situation, because the city's a landowner, you guys have had a front row seat since day one of us pursuing this project. And I think in some ways that's made people think that things have been negotiated behind closed doors or there's secret side agreements, and none of that is accurate. We've been evaluating whether or not it works. We're here tonight to say, we think it does work, and here's the concerns we've heard, and here's what we plan to do, and here's what the process is going to look like going forward. So, and I'm happy to meet with you personally if you'd like to talk about that. I think I've offered that before. And so if you'd like to do that, I've met with other neighbors and they've been successful. I'm not saying when I walked out of there, they were like, yeah, let's do it. But I think when you have a one-on-one conversation, and hear from the other person and you understand the situation, you're able to make better decisions on whether or not you think this is a thing. So that invitation is open to meet with you. Right?
Thank you. Thank you.
How many licenses? How many licenses? You know, state.
What type of license? Oh, I'm not a contractor, I'm a developer. So we would hire, one of the premier general contractors in the country to build a facility. I don't have a license, I'm a developer, I'm not a contractor.
If data centers are currently listed as a permitted use in the city's zoning regulations, what legal basis was used to begin negotiating a project of this magnitude?
Once again, I'm assuming this is a question. We're determining feasibility. And so there's no basis for any rezoning, or we understand data centers not in the city's code. But when we talk to the city about what a data center is, the revenue it produces, they were interested in pursuing it. And so that's what the pre-development agreement allowed us to do. It was not an approval of the project by any means. There are many steps we still have to go through. And I'll just also note, this tonight is not one of the steps that we have to go through. So this is a good faith effort to answer questions. And hopefully, whether you leave here tonight wanting a data center or not wanting a data center, hopefully you appreciate the good faith conversation.
Why is the city considering commitments involving land, utilities, and incentives before first determining whether the proposed use is even compatible with existing zoning regulations?
Yeah, once again, it's not unusual for a city to look at a proposed project and see that it doesn't fit in their zoning code. And there's often updates made to the zoning code based on analysis by city staff and professionals. So this is not an unusual thing with the development.
If this project is appropriate for Osawatomie, why has the city not first adopted specific regulations governing noise, lighting, setbacks, traffic, water use, emergency response, and property owner protections?
All those things will happen.
Is ALCO the actual developer, long-term operator of this facility, or is business model to secure entitlements and infrastructure before transferring the project to another company?
So our business model is to partner with individual partners to prepare the site and potentially build the site, but we will engage in a relationship with an actual, that we're not data center companies, we're development companies. And I'll just say, this is no different than when we build a dentist's office. We want dentists, we build them for dentists, we sell them or we lease them. We build assisted living, we don't operate assisted living facilities. So we built apartments, we've done a lot of different things. MDH has done a ton of industrial development, and they do not operate industrial companies. So this will be a site that is prepared and either sold or leased to a data center user. And that's very standard, both, as I mentioned, with other types of development projects and in the data center. Companies like Google, Meta, they do not come to the city of Osawatomie or the city of Olathe or other towns and have public hearings and talk about their projects. They let somebody else do that for them. And then when it's prepared, when it's suitable, they come in and say, what agreements have you made with the city? And do those agreements, can we live under those? And if we can, then we'd like to move forward with either leasing or purchasing this facility. So everything we're doing is very standard.
Have independent studies been complete regarding noise, traffic, property values, environmental impacts, water demand, and quality life impacts? If not, why not?
So studies are underway. I'm not aware of a study that we can do regarding property values. However, we're not aware of significant reduction in property values based on a data center, the quality that we're talking about building. Especially, once again, you have to have the backdrop in your mind that this has been industrial zone property for a long time. So Tyson could come build a chicken slaughtering plant there, and that would be a much worse outcome for the neighbors than what we're proposing. I do like chicken, but.
Would the city permit any other heavy industrial project of this magnitude, or first create a zoning framework specifically designed to regulate it?
We want to be the only ones. No, hope not. Yeah.
If the project is truly beneficial, why not complete the full zoning, rezoning, districting, environmental review, and public hearing process before asking residents to trust the outcome?
Once again, hopefully we've cleared that up tonight, that all of that is happening. And I want to reiterate that because the city owns the land and the pre-development agreement was public from day one, you've heard about this project for a long time, and it may feel like it's already approved, but it is not already approved. And all of those studies are happening and will be submitted, and you'll have an opportunity to review them and give feedback, and we're committed to more community engagement because we understand not everyone is going to want this project, but we really feel like if you take an honest look at where it's located and what we're proposing, and you see the actual protections, the sound, lighting, traffic, environment, and you look at the serious economic impact it makes for the community, we firmly believe the project will stand up to those scrutinies. And so we're looking forward to submitting this.
What objective criteria were used to determine that a hyperscale data center is compatible with nearby homes, businesses, and community facilities?
Well, we feel like it's compatible with industrial zone property. That's where data centers typically located. And when the city asked us a couple of years ago to keep our eyes out for possibilities for that industrial area, when this opportunity came forward, we felt like it was a good fit to at least see if it was this one of them.
This one was submitted by Nelson Worley. Will you sign a legal binding community benefits agreement that compensates homeowners for lost property value if data center impacts local home prices?
There will be significant contributions to the community by the data center and by the development itself. We have no way of ascertaining property values. I will say there are some residents that are close enough that We would offer to buy their property now above current value. If they'd like to move, we'd like to give them enough financial resource that they could go and buy something better somewhere else if they really don't want to live next to it. But we're also committed to limiting those impacts so that there isn't a reduction in property value. And in fact, as roads get paved and the electric grid gets more resilient, there's some things that will improve property value of the project.
This is the last, plan and zoning question. Amanda Burke. What protections will be tied to the land and approvals themselves rather than only the Alco developments volunteer committee?
Yeah, a development agreement will be negotiated with the city that will have serious protections in place. The site plan will also be approved with stringent conditions on what the development can look like and what it can sound like. So all those things are fully legally enforceable, just like the city enforces other codes. They have the opportunity, I heard tonight, that they aggressively enforce codes. So I would assume that we would be treated no different.
Representative County. All right, the next set of questions is on property management. The next two questions are from Chastity Hendrickson. How do property be kept up long term so it doesn't fall into poor condition or become overgrown?
Yeah, we'd be bringing in, one of the most credible operators on this in the country, and it would be multi-billion-dollar investment. There's no reason that they would, allow it to ever go below that standard.
What contracts will be in place so it stays maintained if ownership changes later?
I don't think that there's going to be a risk for a multi-billion-dollar investment to not be maintained at the highest standards possible.
Next question.
You want to answer that?
Could I say one thing about that?
Yeah.
The development agreement and the site plan and those agreements, they transfer with the property.
Right.
And so anything that we agree to, that's enforceable by the city is going to be enforceable on whoever's there. If it's 50 years from now, it's going to be enforceable based on what we negotiate. So those are the protections that are in place.
Yeah. Stop.
When it becomes outdated, what happens to it and who is responsible?
Yeah, these buildings are built with the future proofing in mind. And just remember, it is 4 walls and a roof with a lot of space inside of it for servers, electrical distribution equipment, and cooling equipment. And those can be updated and replaced as they are either obsolete or worn out from an operational standpoint. Buildings are designed and constructed to last, 50, 7,500 yards, 100 years. So.
Is there a timeline for when this will be considered outdated technology and possibly abandoned? This is from Kelly Ford.
I don't think anybody sitting in this room is going to be, it is going to be around anymore when this thing is completely abandoned. So there is technology that's evolving rapidly. The building design is future proof.
The next two questions were submitted by Stephanie Bevins. If actual impacts differ from projections, particularly regarding water use, infrastructure strain, air quality, or utility costs, what enforceable measures will be in place to require mitigation, operational changes, or compensation for the city and residents?
So as a condition of the zoning, we anticipate making commitments on most of, if not all of those items. And as a condition of zoning, the city has the ability to enforce the zoning conditions. So that's just inherently the right of the city to do that.
I would appreciate independent studies, utility reports, government data, or other real-world evidence from existing facilities rather than developer projections or models.
If that kind of data is not available, what independent analysis will be completed before any final decision is made?
That's a question for you guys. We'd certainly be willing to help connect you with the resources that can do that analysis. And then if there's a requirement in the zoning application process to ensure that you guys are compensated for those studies, we can certainly handle that as well.
This is from Polly Plain. You do not always follow up with your developments as promised in this town. Why should we trust you?
MDH has never not completed a project. We've never lost a dime of our investors' money. We've never defaulted on a loan. And you can bet we'll not do that in this project as well.
And once again, if I could say something about that also. Once again, I appreciate the conversation about Swenson School. Also say we're building a subdivision in Osawatomie right now on Heritage Hills. The city had applied 3 times for moderate income, is that right, 3 times? Moderate income housing, 6 times for moderate income housing grants to provide affordable housing. They asked us to partner with them to apply for that. We received the grant on the first application. 4 of the houses are completed right now. 2 more are getting ready to start. So we certainly have a track record of completing projects, and as Charles said, NDH has an exceptional track record and funding to make sure this project comes to fruition. No, sir.
This is also from Polly Plain. What will you or the owner of the data center do when updates are made and the data center will be decommissioned in 15 years? Or will it be augmented? When this happens, what are the plans for the facility? Tear down? What are the environmental steps? What are the environmental steps that will be taken at that time?
I don't think there's going to be any consideration for it being torn down. It's going to be a multi-billion-dollar investment that's built with future-proof design in place. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. Sorry, ma'am? I think the concerns around obsolescence are the components and parts inside the building, not necessarily the building itself. The building itself will be constructed of, tilt wall or precast concrete, and those things will stay around for a long time. I don't think that there's going to be any, all the buildings that we develop, we develop with like 100-year lifespan in mind. So we, ask our structural engineers 100-year lifespan. So that's how this building would be constructed.
The next 2 questions are from Elizabeth Holmes. What guarantee can you give that you can replace parts as they fail?
Assuming that refers to electrical systems, cooling systems, servers, things like that. Facilities with this level of investment have very, very robust operation and maintenance budgets, and there will always be capital available for those types of replacements.
Will it have its own dedicated PACMAT emergency crew? If not, how do you plan to mitigate liability by training our volunteer crew?
It's sad we do have hazmat training already. Certainly gap analysis will be conducted with the fire and first responder community. I don't think there's going to be hazardous materials involved with this construction and its operation. And then there are lots of engineering control measures that go into the fire protection system.
The next 2 questions are from Lee Brewer and Story Park. If Alco intends to market or transfer the project to an eventual end user, who exactly will the city and residents be dealing with 5 years from now?
So the zoning goes with the property for the existence of the property, and the zoning is the enforcement mechanism. The town, the city council, the executive branch has over the owner of the property. Real estate does get sold, certainly from time to time, and if you build this building for for decades of operation, it will likely be sold and transferred, but again, that really solid development service agreement and zoning agreement is going to be the mechanism through which accountability will be held for the facility's operation over the long term.
What happens if the project changes hands after approvals are granted? Do all promises and commitments remain enforceable against future owners?
Yeah, again, development service agreement and the zoning are the mechanisms through which those commitments are held, so that transfers the property.
This is from Randy Bird. If Project Catalyst is sold, leased, transferred, or operated by another company in the future, what specific conditions, restrictions, monitoring requirements, and enforcement mechanisms will remain legally binding on the properties, regardless of who owns or operates the facility?
Yeah, I think that's a direct overlap with the last question, so it would be those documents we just discussed.
Does Alcove intend to offer to purchase real estate in an area impacted by the proposed data center in areas that the utilities cannot use in the domain during development?
So, we would explore expanding our site if there are other suitable locations that are adjacent. So that's something we would certainly have a conversation about. And then as far as eminent domain, as a developer, we don't have the ability to conduct an eminent domain. So, yeah.
This is from Dan. I'm sorry. Amy. Does Alcove have a buyer for the project, or is this a speculative build?
So we are speculatively engaging in a feasibility, due diligence, and zoning process. I think GW covered this earlier, but there's not going to be, hyperscale interest on a site that's partially zoned and not fully powered. So there's a lot that we have to do in that rezoning, entitlement, and powering process to advance the site to a place where we can start engaging with the hyperscaler community.
Moving on to water. A lot of them are kind of redundant.
Yes, sir.
But I'm gonna go ahead and read them all.
Yes, sir.
Read them from the writer. How much water will this use per day or year? Where is it coming from, and what does that do to the local supply?
So we are going to be tapping the city utilities for water. We've made a projection that, as much as 80,000 gallons a day across the facility. Most of that is for, employees using restrooms and washing hands and whatnot, and then also consistently, replenishing any of the cooling components as required. I'm sorry, sir, what was the rest of the question?
Where does the local supply come from?
I'm not an expert on y'all's, but we are committed to. Yes, sir.
That came from Chastity Henderson, Bill Grassi. What is the maximum projected daily water consumption in gallons per day required from the facilities of operation?
No evaporative cooling units as much as 80,000 gallons a day.
Grassi, another question, will any proportion of this facility's water supply be sourced via local groundwater or shared regional aquifer? If so, what hydraulic model has been conducted to ensure that the neighboring private wells located just outside the city limits will not suffer from localized drawdown, loss of pressure, or structural?
Groundwater hydraulic studies are included in civil design, so that would certainly be covered. We don't know, we're still in a preliminary stage. We don't know the full the full design. Yeah.
Right, but we're using municipal water.
Right.
We're not using ground.
Yeah.
Well water.
Yes.
It's municipal water up to 80,000 gallons a day.
Hey, Bill Grassi, again, exactly how does Alco Development plan to dispose of chemical laden wastewater? Will any proportion of this Effluent being discharged into the local watershed, issues municipal water, wastewater system, and hot binding mitigation protocols are in place to ensure these chemical contaminants never infiltrate our shared water, groundwater, agricultural runoff, or private wells.
So I think the basis of some of those questions are evaporative cooling systems that are open loop that would have a water treatment component. We're not planning on using an evaporative cooling system, so I don't think there's going to be any sort of concerns around contaminated water disposal.
7011s. The developer has stated that the facility will be air cooled. Does that mean it will require no municipal water for cooling, or will it still use water for other operations? If water is used, what are the estimated averages and peak daily demands, and how does that compare to existing system capacity?
Yes, sir. I think we've covered that one.
Same person, Stephanie Blevins, a BBC News article published in October 2024 reported concerns communities hosting large data centers about significant water demand and strain on local infrastructure, including reported impacts on water availability and water pressure to high demand areas. Similar concerns have also been reported in the other U.S. locations with large scale data center development. What independent evidence from accountable facilities demonstrates that this project will not negatively affect local water supply, water pressure, water quality, wastewater system?
So we'll do a detailed analysis of the construction upgrades for the site, and any sort of requirements or upgrades are going to be borne by the cost of the project. I think that's where the concern is there with well.
Upgrade that infrastructure, how will that impact the whole residents? And why won't we as county residents get a say in using our county roads to access? If you have to upgrade it, should we be in this fight? Should this be the entire county and not just those bodies?
Well, it's a matter of state law that cities make the zoning decisions in property that's in the city limits. However, I will say, like I said earlier, I've met with a number of residents who do not live in the city limits, and I'm open to meeting with you, sir, if you like, and we'll meet with anyone that lives directly in the area. My thought would be if a road gets improved, that's probably a benefit to you and not a negative. But the city council and city staff is also open to these meetings to comments.
It shouldn't be something. I have a question from Polly Lane. You said you will use a closed loop system, question mark. What types of closed loop systems will you be using? Several closed loop systems use more than one method. Which two methods or more will you use? Or will you use single closed loop system?
So I don't fully understand the question. It would be a closed loop system. There are ways of interconnecting the chillers from piping standpoint. I don't know if that's what the question was, but yeah, air cooled chillers would be the basic design, and that direct to chip cooling. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, for Polly again, if you use the two method closed loop system, what type will you be using, direct or chip method? Emission cooling method, which will reduce fan noise or free cooling.
Yeah, we definitely want to pursue that direct to chip cooling. That is a very, very cool emerging technology that allows us to pick up a lot of efficiencies. So definitely that.
The polyamide systems and closed loop method often use liquid to remove the heat and a secondary heat to it outside.
So a closed loop system technically only has one loop. So basically all the water that goes through the heat exchanger on the chiller also goes through the heat exchanger on the cooling device. So hopefully that answers the question. Yeah, not a evaporative. So it would be air. So fans would be blowing air across a condenser coil to reject the heat.
Okay, last vote for Paul. Some of these closed loop systems will still have issues. How will you resolve these issues?
I mean, I think that air-cooled chillers are extremely well vetted and long-term technology. It's been around. I would imagine there's an air-cooled chiller downtown, or a lot of them. It's actually a pretty simple technology. As far as I feel like some of my answers are running together at this point. I think it's a very robust technology.
Okay, this is for Roseanne Shelton. What cooling system will be used and what is the projected daily water? Okay.
I think you covered that one, sir.
Roseanne, will a facility draw from the municipal water supply? Has the city assessed capacity impacts on the residential service?
We do plan on tapping into the municipal water supply. We plan on fully studying its impacts and paying for upgrades.
Okay, from Roseanne again, what chemicals will be used in the cooling systems? And how will wastewater be treated before it's discharged?
I'm not an expert on the type of potential antifreeze that could be added to the system. That would be based on design engineers, but I do know that in some circumstances, glycol could be added to the closed loop water. So again, it would not be exposed to the outside of the closed loop system, but there is a potential that glycol could be used.
But it cannot be put into the city's sewer system.
Correct.
It has, if that is used, then there is an industrial pre-treatment that is built on site for that closed loop water to go through pre-treatment, so then it can be discharged. So there's absolutely no chemicals that are going to be released to the city sewer system.
From Roseanne again, will the facility be required to monitor and public report water discharge quality?
I think that, I mean, we're committed to whatever engineering controls are required on removing water from the facility. I think there may be some misnomers about the use of chemicals in a data center. So I don't think that's going to be a major concern, but we will certainly study it and be in compliance with any sort of water quality considerations.
Okay, another one from Roseanne, what is the plan for contaminated PFAS and heavy metal contamination in discharge?
Yeah, we don't, so I think PFAS is a forever chemical that's found in like, I'm not an expert on it, but I think it's found in like non-stick pans. I don't anticipate that being in any way used at this facility. And what was the other one, sir?
Heavy metal.
Yeah, that will not be a concern either. We're not processing hazardous materials here. We're just running servers and cooling them essentially.
Okay, last one from Roseanne, if an alternative cooling is used instead of water, what is its full chemical composition and what is the plan for safe handling and contaminated for this full?
It'll be water, and we're committed to, if it ever has to be removed from the site, it will be chemically treated and removed in a compliant manner.
4D, this is for the council. Will the council be released in the results of completed environmental impact studies? I'll get the answer from the council, yes, if you will. If any other studies, that's public. That would be all studies.
Yeah.
This is the phone. So your wastewater outlet be before or after our new portable water treatment facility? Our sewer plant is after. Our sewer plant is after our water plant. A Jacqueline Newcomb with grounds, why are we giving water away? Please explain this.
Really for them.
For Sterling, how is the groundwater going to be protected?
Not using groundwater system.
What about rural district water?
All right, District 3,
Well, rural water district.
3 or 2?
Two.
2 comes off the Hillsdale, it doesn't affect you at all. We don't use any rural water, cool water. None. Never. We don't have a pipe through your system. We have no way to get water to.
All right, next topic is wildlife. First question is from Chad Anderson. How are animals being protected in the site? Deer and wildlife are moving through this property. All vehicles also visited this proposed site. What is being done to make sure that continues?
So we've already released our consultants on a endangered species and suitable habitat for endangered species and natural resources study. Basically what they do when they conduct these studies, they do a site survey, they walk through the site, they look for suitable habitats for endangered species and then protected. My brain's starting to get fried here. Basically, we're investing in consultants to go and take a look at that, and we will we'll be in compliance with all fish and wildlife concerns.
All right, the next three are from Bill Grassley. What studies have been conducted on how continuous 24/7 low frequency noise and groundborne vibrations from industrial chillers impact livestock stress levels, breeding cycles, and overall herd health?
Knowing that agriculture is a very important part of the local economy, that's definitely important to us. I think that we can, we'll certainly release this results of the noise study, and we'll let someone who's smarter than me on agriculture and agricultural impacts and livestock impacts weigh in on that.
How will alcove development mitigate the severe light and noise pollution to prevent disrupting local wildlife, disrupting nocturnal ecosystems, and altering regional migratory bird corridors?
Yeah, once again, impact studies are underway, and hopefully one of the things that we've accomplished tonight is the understanding that this is, yes, a real estate development, but it's not significantly different than other things that could be built. And so these studies will show what impacts will be, but they'll also give you an opportunity to see, you got me. You got me. I'm sorry. I don't know what's on your QR code, but you got it.
Let's go into a data center. Go into a data center.
So the studies are underway, noise, lighting, the way they impact humans or similar how they impact wildlife, and those studies are underway.
What protections are in place to ensure that stormwater runoff from the massive impervious surfaces, roofs and parking lots does not discharge superheated water into our local streams, which would destroy local aquatic wildlife and contaminate water used by livestock downstream?
There will be no superheated water. I can attest to that. And then stormwater management planning is a very important part of the zoning submittal, and those studies are underway right now. So we have a civil engineer who is conducting a stormwater management plan. I believe there is a stormwater management district that reviews that type of stuff, or maybe at the city level. We're still figuring that out. They will review our stormwater management plans to make sure they are in compliance with all regulations.
All right, Elizabeth Holmes says, how will you protect the protected species of animals, birds, insects, and plants in the construction zone?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely impacts to plants and wildlife when you do development, when you build buildings, but protected species of plants and animals will be identified, and we will submit any sort of impacts to regulators for them to weigh in on how to handle it.
Laura Sterling, how is the wildlife going to be protected?
I think through the mechanism I just discussed.
Next, several are from Natalia Cortez Barr.
All of my questions have been answered, and I would like to respectfully withdraw them. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia, and it's the wildlife case.
Will taxes be lower? Yes.
Yes. Thank you both for all the questions.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the opportunity. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the residents showing up and asking the questions, and we're happy to continue the conversation. In closing, I'll just say when I was in middle school, I played a basketball game on this floor, and believe it or not, tonight was a much more pleasant experience than that was.
All right, we're going to move on to unfinished business resolution A, resolution 1381, item A, authorizing final motion to cease to serve the KCC.
Thank you, Mayor. As was mentioned at the last council meeting, this resolution authorizes the motion that has been in your packet now for 4 weeks now, since the June 11th council meeting, to file the motion to cease electrical service of the city electric territory to the 3 parcels in question. And Evergy will file a motion with the Kansas Corporation Commission to assume service. And then the Kansas Corporation Commission will then review those motions, and 99% of the time they sign off on those, and the service territory gets transferred from one utility provider to the next. Ordinarily, the Kansas Corporation Commission does not regulate municipal utilities, but in terms of service territory, they certainly do. Are there any questions? Yes.
And this is still just contingent on this project, correct?
This is with the, yes, with the contingent on the project, getting all of the zoning and stuff approved and in place, but yes.
Any other questions, comments from council? Brett on this?
Mayor, I move to approve resolution 1381 for the KTC.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Chastain, a second by Councilman Hennis to approve resolution 1381, authorizing final motion to cease to serve the KCC. Any other questions or comments from council? Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Chastain?
Aye.
Councilmember Basic?
Aye.
Councilmember Dean?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickinson? Councilmember Dennis?
Aye.
Councilmember Brett?
Aye.
Councilmember Phillips? Aye. Councilmember Caldwell? Aye.
Motion carries. Move on to resolution 1382, authorizing a negotiation for a new franchise fee with Evergy.
Earlier in the developer's presentation, they showed a financial model that indicated the city of Osawatomie would receive north of $30 million per year. A big chunk of that is a franchise fee that we would collect off the electricity that's consumed and sold to the data center. That number is between 15 and 20 million. Obviously, at the beginning of construction, when construction power is being used on site to build the facility, there will be electricity consumed. Evergy would sell them that power. We would get a franchise fee off of that. So the minute construction starts, we're going to start receiving revenues from this project. Will those revenues be significant enough once construction starts to begin reducing the property taxes? I don't know. That's going to be contingent upon the value that's added to the property and also the amount of electricity that's purchased during the construction process. However, once the first couple of buildings are up, that will net a significant amount, albeit not the full amount because it's not fully built out yet, but a full amount of a fair amount of franchise fee revenue. Those revenue dollars will then go directly into the general fund and then allow us to begin reducing the property taxes. And as it was presented, that construction process could begin as early as 2028, which I would anticipate the initial property tax reductions won't be large,
but we could potentially see them beginning in as early as 2029, no later than 2030. And with that, I would recommend that the council authorize the negotiation of a 5% franchise with Evergy. And I would, one more thing, I would also mention that the franchise fee that we collect is only off the properties that are within the corporate limits of the city of Osawatomie. So any Evergy customers that are adjacent to this property that do not live inside the city limits of Osawatomie will not be paying a franchise fee to the city of Osawatomie. It's only the parcels that are inside city limits that receive Evergy's power.
Will this apply to other projects within the city limits?
Any project that is within the city limits that is receiving power from the city of Evergy, or my rate's right too. Any project or any parcel that's within the city limits of Osawatomie that receives an Evergy power will pay a 5% franchise fee.
We don't have any of this. And we don't have any of them.
There's no other than projects.
There might be a couple of parcels south of town that are inside Evergy service territory. We get a little bit of franchise fee from them, even though the agreement is long expired. There was a typo in the action item summary. It said it was a 5%. The older percentage was 5%, but it was actually 4%. I've already told Evergy that we want a 5%. They did not balk at that. So the franchise agreement that you'll see when it's completed will be 5%. But the little bit of franchise fees we get from Evergy now are most likely from the properties that are inside city limits south of this water.
I'm going to ask the question. This will not impact the research to the north.
No, it will not.
It'll ask if it would impact the neighbors, because projects are held open. Is there any other questions? Right. On this franchise.
I'll move here. I make a motion to approve resolution number 1382 to renegotiate the franchise agreement. City of Osawatomie and Evergy.
Got a motion by Councilman Mason, and second by Councilman Shasteen to approve resolution 1382, authorizing the negotiation for a new franchise fee for the Evergy at 5%. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Shasteen?
Aye.
Councilmember Mason?
Aye.
Councilmember Dean?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickinson? Aye. Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Brett?
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips? Aye. Councilmember Caldwell? Aye.
Motion carries. Move on to new business. Resolution 1384, 2026 revenue neutral rate notice to county clerk for the 2027 budget.
When the state legislature adopted the revenue neutral rules here about 4 years ago, they added some additional processes. One of those processes is to hold a revenue neutral rate hearing prior to holding your budget hearing. The city of Osawatomie, since those rules were in place, has never been revenue neutral. The budget statutes require every year that the county clerk notify every taxing jurisdiction within the boundaries of the county what their assessed valuation is and what their revenue neutral rate requirement would be. We received ours, they're required to be out by June 15th. We received ours on June 15th. The revenue neutral rate was a little bit north of 78 mils. When we put the budget together, our required mill levy is 76, so we do not need to have a revenue neutral rate notice. We're slightly over 2 mils below the revenue neutral rate. So that's about all the answer questions or anything I have to say on the budget resolution in front of you, the revenue neutral rate notice. We do have to provide the notice of intent to the county clerk by July 20th. And this resolution authorizes me to go ahead and send that over to the county clerk tomorrow.
I move to approve resolution 1384, sending the, London County Park notice that, we will be revenue neutral for the budget year 2027.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Brandon, seconded by Councilman Dennis, to approve resolution 1384, revenue neutral agencies to the county clerk for the 2027 budget. Any questions or comments from council? Madam Clerk?
Trustee,
Aye.
Councilor Mason,
Aye.
Councilor Dean,
Aye.
Councilor Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilor Hennis,
Aye.
Councilor Brett,
Aye.
Councilor Phillips. Aye. Councilor Caldwell.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move on to resolution 1385, KDOT authority to award transportation alternatives contract.
On June 17th, KDOT put out the bid for our TA grant. We've been talking about the TA grant for a couple of years now. That is the John Brown Loop and South Levy Loop project, sidewalks, trail extension, et cetera. The apparent low bidder came in from Pillow Construction at $1,631,160. KDOT did review the bid, found it satisfactory, and is recommending award of the contract. The total project cost now, including construction engineering, comes to just over $1.86 million. The project is funded at an 80-20 split. That means federal funds cover $1,488,106, and the city's required match is $373,000, which will need to be remitted to KDOT by August 6th. These funds were reserved for this project and are ready to be remitted. In order for KDOT to move forward with the awarding of the contract, they need us to sign and return their authority to award form by July 10th. The form requires signatures from the mayor, 2 council members, the director of public works, and the city clerk. Council will need to determine which 2 council members will sign along with the mayor. Resolution 1385 accepts the low bid, commits our matching funds, and authorizes the above mentioned individuals to sign on the city's behalf, and I recommend approval.
Quickly, Michelle, do you remember how many feet of sidewalk that will put in?
I am so sorry, I don't remember that off the top of my head.
But it's quite a bit.
It is quite a bit, and it comes up 9th Street. It also comes up 12th Street, and it adds a lot of shared use path within the city park, allowing people to get from Main Street on sidewalk up to the cabin and then back down in a loop to Main Street.
So do we need to nominate the 2 other council members before we pass the resolution, or vice versa?
That's probably the easiest way, is just to decide who, so we know who's signing. And then Dan had a question.
Mr. Hennis volunteered, and everybody. Mr. Chastain volunteered, discussing for. So. Nominate him, or.
That's fine. It's just, Sammy has to, it's just so we know. Did you have a different question than that?
I do. In the, it's about 5th paragraph, that's a resolution. Low construction bid was $1,631,000, but the chart below is $1,628,000.
I can clarify with KDOT, why that would be different. For sure. I'm guessing it's a typo on the form because I pulled the, bid from the bid tab. So I'll have him send a new form and then we'll sign it.
Still continues a little bit.
Yeah, that's.
Mayor, I move we approve resolution 1385, ADOT authorizing the award to transportation alternatives contract. Kilo.
Got a motion by Councilman Brett, a second by Councilman Dennis, to approve resolution 1385, the KDOT authority to award transportation alternatives contract to Kilo. Any questions or comments from council? Madam Clerk?
Councilor Chastain,
Aye.
Councilor Mason,
Aye.
Councilor Dean,
Aye.
Councilor Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilor Hennis,
Aye.
Councilor Brett,
Aye.
Councilor Phillips. Aye. Councilor Caldwell. Aye.
Motion carries. We will move on to council reports. I'll start by that Councilman Chastain, the other report.
No, nothing report tonight. Nothing you basically hear me say. I know tonight was a long night for all of us. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for submitting questions. Thank you to the developers for fielding them all. I just want to remind everyone that this weekend is the Lights on the Lake event. The city started at 5 and the fireworks will be about 9:45 after the Arena Rock Giants concert. I would also like to thank everybody for the show. Thank you for staying. Appreciate you. Appreciate your questions. Questions, I didn't think of it, well, I will do that. Appreciate it. And I look forward to, continuing with this. Just want to also say thanks to everyone that stayed after a long night, so appreciate you here. I'm currently unable to open my email, my city email. Use my cell phone number if you want to contact me by phone, or text, or if my garage door is open, feel free to stop me at any time. I'll talk to you when I get the time. Oh, Nick, so, no report, okay.
I'm saying with the second one. So I'll go with the first thing I'm gonna say, John Harden, everyone from the development, had a chance to enjoy it. The parade was great, ran it out of the way, and the weather was amazing, so we ended up with 780 wristbands full at the carnival, which is a great turnout. And then, if I could find it really quickly, we'll tell you what the slide on. It's 2.7 miles of a shared use path sidewalks, gravel trail, 2,475 feet of new sidewalks.
There are no other city staff report. If not, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Got a motion by Councilman Bratton, second by Councilman Shastine for adjournment. All in favor, aye. Aye. We are